In this video, I'm going to show you how my client Marcus went from absolute zero to hitting $1 million in sales in his online fitness coaching business in just 16 months. And that was with over 80% profit margins. He didn't send a single cold DM and he didn't spend a dime on ads either. So here's the proof. Here's the Stripe screenshot of almost $1 million. He's 5K off, but he did make 60K on other platforms as well. So we'll let him off. 140K per month as well he hit. And others who have installed this system as well. You know, Trevor, he went from 8K to 56K in 46 days. Jonathan, 1.5K to 16K in 75 days. And Teresa, 3 to 32K per month in 120 days. However, with Marcus in particular, he had no prior coaching experience. He'd never even taken a sales call before. And he wasn't some, fitness influencer with a big following either. To this day, he's making all this money. He only has a total audience size of around 80K. And the reason I'm making this video is to show you what's actually possible when you build the business the right way. And if you're watching right now, there's a chance you fit into one of these three positions. One, you're a personal trainer who wants to transition online. You want to stop trading your time for money. You want an income that is no longer capped by the amount of hours that you can work in the day, but you're just not entirely sure how to actually structure your online coaching offer so it can scale. Perhaps you're an online fitness coach already, but you're just feeling a bit stuck. You don't really know what the real bottlenecks are, and maybe you're a bit stagnant right now. Or perhaps you're someone like Marcus who you're a fitness enthusiast. Maybe you're in good shape. You're really passionate about this, and you want to switch roles, right? You want to do something that you're crazy passionate about, and you know you can help other people do the same thing. So if you're in any of these positions, then you're in the right place, because I'm going to drop a ton of value in this video. Just a quick heads up though, just to be transparent, there is an offer at the end. But seriously, feel free to ignore it. Take everything you learn in this video and go away and implement it for yourself. The primary goal of this training is just to show you everything that we did to get the result and to share the insights that we learned along the way. That's it. So let's get into it. Now, the reality is things can change very, very fast online. And you don't need to be some big fitness, celebrity with a lot of followers. It's just about doing the right things in the right order, in the right time, with the right infrastructure. And this breakdown is for people that want the most direct path to building a 7-figure online fitness coaching business and becoming a top 1% coach in the industry, right? Why not? So you'll see what matters, what doesn't, and how to skip years of trial and error because we've already done it for you. Literally every moving piece of the machine that produced these results so that you can eliminate all the guesswork, remove all the doubt and uncertainty that's holding you back right now, and actually see in detail, is this path even for you or not? And disclaimer, if you can't watch this video in full, one that literally gives you everything, then I'm sorry, but you're screwed and your likelihood of success is very low. So I just want to put that out there. Now, if you genuinely want a leveraged way of making more than doctors and lawyers without studying for 8 years in a fraction of the time, while doing something that you're insanely passionate about, built around freedom, designed to scale without trading your time for money, and to make an impact as well, right? To help a ton of people, then you're going to want to watch this. So let's take a look at what we're actually going to cover in this video. Because if you're watching this while I'm giving you the context first and you bail because you think that I'm not going deep or I'm being surface level, I can reassure you that this video is jam-packed. So just bear with me, see it through to the end, and you'll see. Now, there'll be a lot of things covered, a lot of insights, and a lot of assets, screenshots shown in this video. To be honest, if you want any of it, just DM me on Instagram. I'll send you over the master file and you can just create a copy. It's no problem. So first, I'm going to explain who I am and how I even got to this point. We're going to cover the limiting belief that has new online coaches in chokehold and why it's completely irrelevant. The psychology of why someone would choose you over a coach with tons of followers. I'm going to break down the math of growing a 6-figure coaching business and how it's a lot more simple than you think. We're going to see the 3-phase model: design, engineer, and scale that took Marcus from 0 to $1 million in sales. You're going to see the actual offer we sold, the price points, and the 8-call closing streak that came out of getting that offer right. We're going to see how we engineered the buyer's journey and the marketing machine that actually powered it. I'll show you how we track and qualify every single person that comes into the ecosystem so that no potential clients slip through the cracks. We'll cover the one simple video, which I call a Trojan Horse VSL, that has completely eradicated the need for an old traditional website. It's going to save you $2K. I'll break down his entire sales process from A to Z so that when people book, you can close them. The client delivery systems that allows him to effectively manage his time and still scale the business. How we created a social proof snowball effect, and a lot of people get this wrong. And finally, the key insights inside the phase 3, which is scale, to simplify, create leverage, and actually scale without going insane or burning out. None of this is theory. It's just exactly what we did from start to finish. So you're not going to want to miss this. So if you don't know me, here's a very quick catch up for you. I've been in the industry for 13 years. I got my PT qualification back in 2013. I spent 5 years on the gym floor, so I know exactly how it feels to be running that model, right? To have your income capped, your time and your freedom. But after transitioning online and generating multi-six figures myself, I became obsessed with the business, marketing, and sales side, and combined with my passion for helping people as well. So here's just a quick screenshot of 12K month, 14K month. I was doing about 10 to 15K before I really got deep into the business side of things. But since then, I've tried different business models just for the passion of it, to be honest. But I always come back to coaching, right? Helping people. Now, one of the most valuable experiences I had personally was teaming up with an online coaching company doing around 200K per month. I was head of operations. And in just 6 months, we were able to scale that up to 800K per month. And I even played a big role in leading a 2.5 million launch as well. And to be honest, that taught me a lot about scaling an online coaching offer. Here's a little photo of us at an event in London. Taylor Welch, don't know if you know him, and just a screenshot there of the 800K month as well. So since then, I've personally partnered with over 75 coaches on a one-to-one basis as a strategic growth partner, helping them scale from anywhere from 0 to 350K per month, which is what Marcus is doing now. So, complete beginners, people at 10K per month, people at 20K per month. I've gone through the whole process myself and with others, scaling it up to multi-seven figures per year. So there's just a little screenshot of Huncho revealing the insane amount that he's able to cash collect that month. And, he's managed to do that in a very short space of time. So last year alone, my one-to-one clients generated over 3.5 million in revenue using this approach. People like Cody, who was working as a tradie, he was able to go from 0 to 10K per month. And now he's living his dream life in Bali. Maria, she was a PT, and she was able to transition online, go from charging a couple $100 per month to collecting 2K paid in fulls. Completely different world. James, he was at about 5K followers, creating kettlebell content, and he wanted to monetize his audience and become a coach. And we were able to get him to 150K followers, and he's now running a 6-figure online coaching business. He was able to do that in around 6 months. So first, let's destroy the number one limiting belief that's keeping most people stuck. So before we break down the mechanics of all this, we need to understand this one belief and why it's completely irrelevant. So that is, the online fitness coaching industry is too competitive or it's too saturated. Now, most people have been conditioned by social media algorithms to think that there's far more competitors than there actually is, but the reality is very different. Even if the competition was that intense, 90% of coaches I see online, they don't even have a real offer in place. They don't have a niche. They simply just put personal trainer or online coach in their bio. They post generic content and they hope that somehow clients will appear. Now, it's very easy to look at an account on Instagram and assume that they're successful. But having the experience and the knowledge that I have, and having spoken to over 500 coaches myself, I can tell you that it almost means nothing, right? What you see on the surface. If you think of an iceberg, you've got the tip, that's what you see. You have no idea what's happening behind the scenes. There's no positioning, there's no clear outcome, there's no specific person to help, which means something very interesting happens, right? If you simply just create an offer for one kind of person to achieve one specific outcome, and you talk directly to that person every time you make a piece of content, you instantly move ahead of those coaches and you create your own lane. That's the whole game. That's what we're trying to do here, because the supply of online coaches is only going to go up, right? And the demand is also going up. And there's billions of users on Instagram every month. So by you niching down, what a lot of coaches think is they're actually going to eliminate a lot of people who they could be helping. But we've all heard the phrase, if you try and help everyone, you end up helping no one. And as time goes on, that's just going to become even more true. So when you combine this with clear messaging, something else happens. You stop competing entirely because people don't choose coaches randomly. They choose coaches for very specific psychological reasons. So yes, the supply of coach clones, as I call them, is going up, but a lot of them are not very successful. So your competitive edge is becoming a specialist who doesn't need a massive following to get online clients. And with that being said, let's take a look at what those reasons actually are and why people decide to buy coaching from you in the first place. Clients will choose to work with you instead of someone else When your offer and messaging resonates with them deeply, you specialize in the exact area that they want to improve. Your content consistently addresses the specific problems that they're experiencing. You show social proof of people who are in their exact position, who are also, getting the outcome that they want. You take time to build genuine relationships with people who engage with your content. And interestingly, if you're more expensive, this actually signals higher value. So there's something called pricing psychology. So if you price on the lower range of what's, perceived as normal, you'll actually have a lot of negative assumptions about what you're selling. So naturally, we want to avoid that at all costs. When you price higher, you get the positive associations. People assume what you're selling is more valuable, it's better. So really, you want to be in that upper range. And to be honest, none of this is that complicated, right? It simply comes down to two things: knowing exactly who you're helping and knowing exactly what transformation you're helping them with. Because by doing this, you're going to lower the supply of what's out there on the market. And if there's less of something, then there's more demand for it. And with more demand means you can price higher. So it's just the way economics works. And obviously we want to give ourselves the biggest competitive advantage possible. So coaching is fundamentally a people's business. So most buying decisions are emotionally driven. It's not like business to business where it's very logical and numbers driven. People have to be in the right mindset at the right time. And you have to be able to trigger those emotions in order to get them to take action. So as long as you can make someone feel like your offer was built specifically for them, and you're also giving their logical brain enough structure and evidence, then they will buy. And something else important to understand is that most people online are looking for a better solution to their problem all the time. A better coach, a better method, a better framework. And when they find someone they like and trust, they're more than happy to pay for that guidance. So you don't need that massive influencer with hundreds of thousands of followers to build a serious coaching business. In fact, the more time goes on and the more sophisticated the market gets, people are starting to understand that the more followers someone has, the less time and attention they're going to get, being one of their clients. So really, your superpower is specializing in one thing. And the fact that you're sort of a smaller coach is actually going to work more in your favor. But this only applies if you're specific and if you're niche down. If you're a generalist and you're trying to compete against these massive accounts who are also basically leaning on their follow account in order to be general, right? They have all this social proof and status that they can get away with being general. But as a small account, if you try and generalize like that, you're just going to get completely drowned out by them. So Marcus is a perfect example of this, right? So that's the psychology side handled. Now let's make it more mathematical, because at the end of the day, it's still a business and the numbers either stack up or they don't. So when it comes to the numbers, what all we're trying to do here is just get you to the point where you can say, I'm actually running a real business here. So let's talk about something important, right? When people start out, they imagine these huge numbers, 6 figures, 7 figures, massive audiences. But the real milestone here is not, $1 million, to be honest, for most people. The real milestone is 10K per month. Now, I know that sounds cliche, but when you actually take a step back and look at it logically, which I'm going to explain, you'll see what I mean. And this is the point where you can actually say, okay, I'm actually running a real business here. Not a side hustle, not a few clients here and there, a real business. And 10K is really not as crazy as it sounds, but there's a reason why it's cliche, right? Because after taxes, after your bills, depending on where you live. Obviously, if you're in a country where the cost of living is very low, then 10K is a lot of money. But let's just take the average person here, perhaps living down south in the UK or in like a major city in the US, right? After you've paid your bills, your living expenses, you've paid your tax and all this sort of stuff, you're not really left with that much money. It kind of represents like stability, okay? You're not going to be becoming some millionaire anytime soon with this, but you are going to be living comfortably and you are going to have a bit of cash left at the end of the month to either enhance your lifestyle or, if you're sensible, save that money or invest it. But you're going to be comfortable. And this is the point where the model starts working. You get proof of concept. And more importantly, this is where you find product market fit. And this is where most coaches never actually get to, because product market fit is not some complicated business term. It just means enough people are consistently saying yes to what you're putting out there. They're saying yes to your content, yes to following you, yes to raising their hand, yes to a conversation, yes to a call, yes to becoming a client, right? You get your point. So you've got the whole journey here of actually getting a stranger to a client and then fulfilling on them. So we're talking about the kind of front end engine here. So when you have enough people saying yes, that's obviously a signal that things are working well. But until you reach that point, you're guessing, right? And you're probably posting content with no clear direction, tweaking random things here and there, hoping it clicks. Maybe still stuck with that kind of personal trainer mindset where you're essentially a commodity trading your time for money. Or you're coming from a 9 to 5 where income is capped. And the problem is, you're programmed to believe that's normal by society. So that's what makes you think, well, your brain convinces you that, everyone else is on this path, like I'm doing okay, so everything's all good. It kills your ambition. So we want to, charging premium prices, structuring offers properly, building real leverage. All this feels like a fantasy because they don't have the experience in the data that creates that conviction. And because of that, they never build a model that actually supports the growth that they truly want. Their brain just keeps pulling them back to the comfort zone because they don't have that conviction that what they're doing is proven and is going to get them to that end goal as long as they just execute. So they end up doing a lot of work but going nowhere. And it's like trying to drive somewhere without a sat nav, right? You're moving, you're busy, but you have no idea if you're actually heading in the right direction. So that's why 10K per month is so important, because that puts you at a milestone where you are heading in the right direction. You do have proof of concept and you've got something real here that you can start to scale up. And that's when things really starts to become predictable, which is why in the beginning, the goal isn't about chasing massive volume. It's about building a model that can get you to that 10K milestone quickly, predictably, and preferably with as little volume as possible, because volume creates a lot of complexity. I can give you an example here. So let's say you gained 10K followers overnight, random people. And now you've got 10K people to try and push through your model, like your systems. How are you going to process all those 10K people in the DMs? There's going to be so many people there who just aren't a good fit, who have followed you for the wrong reasons. And to be honest, it's a headache. So if I could click my finger and give myself 10K followers of random people instantly, I would say no, and I'd recommend all my clients to do the same. So what we want is to optimize things for a lower amount of people, but the right people. And that way, when they actually come in, we know that they're likely to be a good fit. I'm a good example of this. I only have 3.5K followers on Instagram, right? But my content is so specific towards personal trainers and fitness coaches that every sort of like one in 3 people is actually someone who I could help. So that means I don't need to have a lot of conversations. I don't need to have a lot of calls. And I'm talking to people who I know are possibly a good fit right from the get-go. I don't need to find a needle in a haystack with a massive audience coming in, right, every week and every month. So that's so important, right? You want to optimize for revenue per follower. Everyone's thinking about vanity metrics. How many followers can I get? How many likes can I get? No one thinks about how much revenue am I actually generating a follower every month. That's the key metric right there. And that's how you keep things simple and aligned. So volume creates more complexity, more clients, more calls, more DMs. And if it's not structured properly, things are going to get messy very quickly if this happens too soon. So what you want instead is a leveraged approach. And that's why Marcus started with a 3K coaching offer right from the get-go. And before you think, there's no way someone's going to pay me 3K for coaching, don't worry, because I'm going to break down exactly how that works in a few minutes. But for now, just look at the math, okay? So you're selling a 3K program. You only need 4 clients to generate 10K. So let's go one step further here. Let's say your close rate is around 30%, which is about average, which is very achievable, right? If you have your offer and positioning dialed in. You only need around 12 to 15 calls per month to close those 4 clients, and that's 3 calls per week. 3 calls is nothing, right? And that only requires 2 to 3 qualified conversations per day. When your ecosystem is set up, you're targeting the right people, and you're getting a nice little flow of people coming in. So when you kind of break down the numbers like that, something interesting happens, right? The business stops feeling complicated and it becomes a system designed to generate attention, attract the right leads, convert them into clients, and deliver results that then you can use in your marketing to create more demand. So every step is measurable, and that's exactly the machine we built, which I'm now going to show you from a bird's eye view. So the real question becomes, what actually produces those 4 clients per month? And then how do we create a compounding engine that grows the business predictably? Because when you understand that, the entire business starts to make sense. Now, for most coaches, they build their business in the wrong order and they're focusing on the wrong things. They jump straight into posting content, trying to get leads. Maybe they're tweaking their sales calls, their offer all the time. Shiny object syndrome, right? They're jumping between different strategies, but they've never actually designed the business properly in the first place. So nothing really compounds. The way to approach this properly is to build your business around these core phases: design, engineer, and scale. Phase one is design. Okay. So you have to build strong foundations if you're trying to build a tall tower. So before you actually do anything, right, that people see publicly, you have to sit down and actually design the business. And a lot of people skip this, and that's why they struggle. They just throw themselves in, label themselves as an online coach and target anyone that wants to lose weight, and they wonder why they're not able to make the money they want online. So we need to get clarity on who you're actually helping, the transformation that you're selling, and how your business is actually structured from the very front to the very back. So in this phase, you define your ideal client, the offer for that person, your buyer's journey and the ecosystem, and your fulfillment model. Because if this isn't clear, nothing else is going to work properly. So your content won't resonate, your leads won't convert, and your clients won't stay. So then we move on to phase two, which is engineer. Once the foundation is in place, then you move into engineering the business, right? And this is where you take that design and you turn it into systems that actually produce the outputs that you want. So the focus now becomes, how do you generate attention and demand consistently? How do you nurture that attention into real interest? And how do you build a sales process that predictably converts? And then how do you deliver a service that gets real results? And at this stage, you're not guessing. You're building and you're optimizing each mechanism so that everything starts working together. Phase three is scale. So now that the engine is working, you have all these systems that are in KPI. You move on to scale, right? You know that if you get the right people into this ecosystem, that you are going to convert them and you are going to get results. So that just means that, okay, now the bottleneck is I just need more people. And that's a really good place to be. So that's when you kind of enter into the phase three, which is scale. And it's not about doing more. It's about just doing what already works. You can't just keep jumping from strategy to strategy or changing your offer or changing your processes, because you won't get the compounding effect and you won't create more leverage. So the focus shifts to, where do I need to remove friction? And how can I increase efficiency? And then how can I amplify what's already working? And how can I create more leverage so I can actually fulfill on this new volume of people that are coming in? And when this is all aligned, something powerful happens. The business starts to compound. So instead of just chasing clients all the time or working more hours, you get more output from the same inputs. And that's the difference between a coaching business that feels random and one that actually feels like a machine. So in the next few sections, I'm going to break down this step by step. And we're going to start with the first phase, which is design. Starting a fitness coaching business through social media was incredibly easy back in like 2015, especially if you were in a niche that was like visually orientated, like fat loss, building muscle. However, in 2026, and especially, after 2020, socials have become an extremely cutthroat environment, with new creators and coaches springing up every day, taking space up on the feed and making themselves and others indistinguishable from one another. So this is the coach clone effect. And this leads them to be forced to charge lower prices, as basically they have no kind of positioning that puts them above everyone else. So they're on a level playing field, and the only thing left is to compete on price, which is a race to the bottom. And they have no results, nothing that separates them, no kind of stylization or branding that kind of to their content or offer that really puts them in a lane of their own. And, no matter how special they think they are. So new coaches that latch onto the standard approach quickly realize the limitation. And here's a visual representation of both and the new way, so you don't fall into the trap and you can actually give yourself a competitive advantage even in a saturated market. So the standard approach, they copy all the other coaches' surface level offer and messaging, and you end up blending in, looking like every other coach online. You try to appeal to everyone, and you end up with a watered down brand instead of people thinking, damn, this is exactly what I need. You sell workout plans, meal plans, check-ins, which are the features. No one cares about the bridge. They just want to get to the other side. So people don't have a gravitational pull towards your brand because you're just basically just promoting what every coaching offer has. So why would they care? And it's no different to any other coach. So it just becomes a case of them shopping around for the cheapest option. So you compete by being cheaper. You attract low quality, uncommitted clients, and you hide behind a brand or a business name instead of actually positioning your, selling yourself, which means you create no connection, no trust, and no real reason for someone to choose you. And the saturation proof approach is creating a high value offer for one specific person. This makes you a specialist and instantly stands out in the prospect's mind. You speak directly to their exact situation. Every piece of content hits and positions you as someone who understands them clearly. You sell an outcome, not the process. So people want the result, right? Not the plan. Therefore, they're much more emotionally bought into what you're promoting. You price based on value, not competition. You attract serious, committed clients who are looking for the best, not just a quick motivation boost. And instead of hiding behind a brand, you build a personal brand which people actually trust. So people are choosing you as their coach, not just your service. So they want to connect with your uniqueness, which creates a category of one effect. And this is important to understand, right? If your offer, targeting, and messaging are wrong, nothing else in your business will run properly because everything, all your systems in your business needs to revolve around your brand foundations, and it all needs to align with the needs of that one person. So you can see how if you're just trying to speak to everyone, it just completely waters down every part of your business. And you won't be able to attract people that are willing to pay high prices because it doesn't feel relevant enough to them. You won't be able to close sales consistently because there's no clear path from where they are now to where they want to be. And you'll be forced to charge lower prices because there's no real perceived value. And over time, that just creates a downward spiral as more coaches come into the industry. So you're going to have a business that eventually just feels like it's starving if it's not already. Now, that means no consistent cash flow, nothing to reinvest, and you're not going to be able to build any real momentum. So this is where a lot of coaches get stuck, right? Chasing half-interested clients, sending cold DMs, having the same conversations with people over and over again, and the conversations just go cold and you get ghosted. I need to think about it. I need to check with my wife. I'll get back to you. And eventually you just start justifying it and you're telling yourself, money doesn't really matter. I'd rather just be affordable. I just want to help people. I don't need a lot of clients, I just need enough to get by, which are all coping mechanisms, right? And this is just because the business is not built properly in the first place. So here's how to completely eliminate all those problems. But this is also why most coaches never actually build real demand. And here's one of the biggest reasons Marcus was able to scale as fast as he did. And it had nothing to do with some revolutionary program or him being some like fitness celebrity. It came down to one decision made really early on, and we stopped trying to appeal to everyone. Almost every coach entering the space makes this exact mistake, and they call themselves an online fitness coach or a personal trainer, and then they wonder why no one feels connected to what they're offering. So when your messaging is broad, you're outsourcing the thinking to the buyer. They have to work out whether it's actually for them, whether it'll work for someone in their position, right? Because you're just posting results from loads of random people, and whether you even understand what they're dealing with, because you're talking about too many different things in your content. And confused people never buy, ever. They'll have analysis paralysis and they'll always be shopping for something better. So here's exactly what we did. We narrowed Marcus down to one specific type of client, which was men aged sort of like 25 to 35 who could afford a premium offer, who fit a specific physical and emotional starting point, right? Not the guy who's already lean and just wants to optimize. Not the total beginner, the skinny fat guy who's maybe been to the gym before, let himself go a little bit. Someone who looks fine in a t-shirt and knows exactly what he actually wants to look like without one, and who has been avoiding doing anything serious to fix it. We didn't guess at what was actually driving that decision to finally invest. We mapped out the real before state, the stuff most coaches are too scared to say out loud because it's not positive enough. Lack of attention from the opposite sex, low confidence and self-esteem, not liking what they see, self-conscious about their body, right? Heartbreak, coming out of a breakup, low energy, generally feeling unhealthy. And the after state isn't just to lose weight, it's what losing the weight actually gets them, which is feeling attractive again. real self-confidence, not, performed confidence, a higher sense of self-esteem, more energy, feeling healthier, actually being able to perform day to day in a good state of mind. And here's the thing most people miss. Nobody buys fitness coaching just because they want abs. Abs is like the vehicle or the catalyst towards how they actually want to feel. So they buy because of what they feel abs will actually give them. Attention, confidence, status, a different identity. Fitness is rarely the real product, it's the vehicle. And this is where Marcus had something that most coaches can't fake. He'd actually lived that exact before state that he was now selling the way out of. He was the case study, the proof, the leader that could help someone go through that journey as well. So this is the oldest structure in storytelling, a low, painful place, hits some kind of breaking point, finds a way out, comes back changed enough to lead people through the same thing, right? The hero's journey. So you've probably heard it before. It works because the guide isn't just informed, they're actual proof. And that's not just a marketing story. It's the actual reason why his position landed the way it did. When your ICP can sense that you've genuinely been when they are, and you speak about it, when you connect their why to the how, it all clicks. And that's what creates real resonance and emotional connection when you speak to the person you're trying to attract. So once we understood exactly who Marcus was building for, the next job was making sure that the offer actually matched that person, so he didn't drown in the sea of online clones. And a lot of people mess this up. They don't design who they're actually going after and then make the offer so specific to that person. They just come up with the offer first and then they start talking to anyone who might want it, right? So here's the truth about most coaching offers. They're a workout plan, a diet plan, and check-in wrapped in a low monthly price. And the second you're selling that, you're competing with the cheaper coaches, the apps, the fitness plans, information from Google, AI tools, PDFs, you name it. You're completely operating in that market as opposed to operating in the market that's high touch point specific and tailored towards a specific kind of person who wants the best for what they want, right? So it's a race straight to the bottom if you're operating in the wrong market. So people create some basic ass offer, which are just highlights of things that need to happen, the work they have to do, instead of the actual outcome that they're buying into. So no one wants to buy the bridge. They only care about what's on the other side. So because these people have no idea who that offer is actually for, they just open it up to everyone. And because it's so broad, they end up trying to sell the bridge instead of the reasons why someone would even hand over money in the first place. So to solve a problem in order to achieve an outcome, that's what you're doing. People are coming to you with a specific problem that's blocking them from getting to an outcome. So you obviously have to specifically solve that and then sell the outcome. That's how it works. So furthermore, with Marcus, instead of just online coaching, we built a named mechanism and we called it the self-mastery blueprint. And everything Marcus sold from that point was sold through that lens, not as just a generic program. It was his unique mechanism of getting to this outcome. And his offer statement was, for skinny fat men, lose 10% of your body weight, pack on lean muscle, 10x your confidence in 180 days or less using the self-mastery blueprint without gaining the weight back, complicated diets, or giving up your social life. And if it doesn't work, you don't pay. So that last line matters more than it looks like it does. It's not just a guarantee, it's a confidence signal. And is it risky? No, because it's a performance guarantee. So there's a difference there, right? This falls on them. It doesn't fall on you. They need to actually follow the blueprint in full and prove they've done so. And listen, if it doesn't work, well, then that's on the coach and that's completely fair. But the caveat here is you need to have it all laid out in agreement prior to starting the service so it's extremely clear cut. And my personal opinion is if you as the coach have the data and the insights in order to promise an outcome and they do every little thing that you tell them to do, then they're more than entitled to a refund. And personally, I've never had to give a refund for it, nor have any of my clients. So it might sound risky, but it's really not. Now, the initial investment, we did a 3-month and a 6-month. 3-month was $970 and 6-month was $1997. We also had an on-call incentive, which if someone signed up for the 6 months, it would drop down to $1.5K. And then we would simply just have a renewal incentive on the back end for people who complete the program, which was just $250 per month. Now, high ticket isn't just about slapping an unreasonable price tag on your program out of greed, but we want to be in the upper range of what's normal. As we're not selling to everyone here, we're creating something that makes people think, yeah, that's for me. From there, we only make decisions based on data. At the start, it's a hypothesis. Everyone has a different target audience, a different offer, different niche. So you have to just kind of use your common sense. But everything after that point, when you start to get calls booked, it's all logical. So Marcus went on an 8-call closing streak, which is insane. So for context, the 30% close rate is about right, as I said earlier in the video. Any higher, and to be honest, your business is leaking money. Any lower, there's usually a root cause. Spell that wrong. But just because the price is too high doesn't mean that it's just a pricing issue. That would be very rare, especially for fitness coaches, because they always lean towards a more affordable price anyway. So it's always down to offer and positioning. Occasionally sales skills, but as long as you have the right process and frameworks, it's unlikely. So even though this is like quite a meaningful investment for the ICP, it's more appealing, not less, because it's speaking directly to one kind of person with a named mechanism, a guarantee, and a defined timeline, instead of just, an indefinite period of time where you're being coached and there's no kind of end goal in sight. So by you having a named mechanism, a timeline, a guarantee, it gives the impression that it's a repeatable process that you're selling to other people in their situation. It's a proven concept, it's a proven roadmap, and they're just following something that's worked for you and other people. And that's down to your experience, your trial and error, and you actually developing this program, which is designed completely around getting that kind of person to that outcome. So the new investment, right, after looking at the data, which was from around 15 sales calls, was we bumped it up to 2K for 3 months, 3K for 6 months. And if they signed up on the call, it got dropped to 2.5K for 6 months. So here's an important insight. Business is logical, not emotional. And the businesses that actually help the most people are the ones that stay standing long enough to keep doing it. So your negative beliefs around money literally don't matter and are standing in the way of your mission. And what most new coaches don't realize is the operational drag that comes with running a one-to-one coaching offer at low ticket pricing. Operational drag is just the workload attached to you acquiring and fulfilling on that revenue that you have just produced. So how many sales calls do you have to be doing per week to hit 10K per month? How many onboarding calls do you need to be doing? How many conversations do you need to be having daily in order to get to that 10K per month, right? How much ad spend or how many monthly views do you need to be getting in terms of how much content you're putting out there? So obviously, if you're charging lower prices, you have to do a lot more of everything to get to 10K per month. So people fall into this trap. Now, an example of this actually is, I used to run an e-commerce business, right? Selling car parts online. And at the start, I had no expenses, nothing. It was just as much profit as I possibly could. And I made the mistake of pricing as low as possible in order to gain a competitive advantage. And as I started to scale the business, I'd sold over 1,000 products. And at this point, things were really starting to pick up a little bit. And I just had nowhere to go with my profit margins. I was already charging, my profit margins were as low as possible, but I was making money at that time. But then as soon as, I needed a website, I needed to spend money on ads, things like this, I just had nowhere to go and I hit a complete brick wall. So for me, that was quite a big lesson that I learned. And it's a result of not thinking long term and not thinking, what the actual business needs to scale. And, you're not going to say no to scaling your business. So you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot there early on. And it's just down to short-term thinking and what you think is going to be easier in the moment. But if you really want to build a successful business, you have to think long-term and you have to think about these things in advance. All of this is a real cost, even if it doesn't show up on an invoice. And if your actual mission is to help a lot of people at scale, that's the part that doesn't get to stay aspirational. The business has to be built to scale, or the mission stalls out the moment you run out of hours in the day. So I'm sorry, but if you truly are passionate about helping people and you don't care about money that much, but the goal is to help as many people as possible, the business is still a priority. Money is still a priority. Profit is what keeps the wheels turning in any business. You're a for-profit company. So if you want to scale, you have to prioritize profit. Now, as you grow, complexity grows with you. Expenses go up, your time gets more limited. You need cash flow to solve the problems that come with scaling, not just the ones that you have today. And pricing too low is, it's not the humble option. It's the one that caps you and how many people you're able to help long before you hit a ceiling on demand, which is exactly why the offer itself had to be built properly before any of this worked. Now, his offer deliverables, which mapped across the actual client journey, were a 90-minute kickoff call / goal setting call, whatever you want to call it, a custom training plan, custom nutrition protocol, weekly video check-ins, a group call, exclusive community access, lifetime access to his course material, access to a personalized app, and a guaranteed path with obviously the guarantee. A lot of people, they just say training plan, nutrition plan, and check-ins. Now, another example of a good deliverable is worked with a kettlebell coach. Obviously, he's helping a lot of people who are starting that kind of training for the first time. So when they went with the 6-month option, he would send them a little starter pack, which is a deliverable that's very specific towards the kind of people that he's helping. So you can get really creative with it. It could be like a recipe library. There's so many different cool deliverables that you could come up with that make your program feel very unique to what they're trying to get. And all the deliverables should basically just reduce friction in order for them to get to the outcome. So none of this is random padding. Every piece exists to remove friction, make the guarantee actual deliverable. And because of the offer only works if the fulfillment behind it holds up. Now we move on to phase 2, which is engineering. So the foundations are locked in, his positioning, his ICP, his offer, it's all built, it's all dialed in. Now came the part where the systems, processes, and execution takes place. So engineer is where you take that high-level design and you turn it into working systems. Ones that you can actually run, test, and refine instead of just theory sitting in your head. So it must be clear, measurable, and predictable. And the more you change things or add unnecessary complexity that adds confusion for either you or your leads, the less your business can compound because there's no clarity and there's too much friction. So there are 2 journeys to build here, and most coaches only ever think about the first one, right? One is the buyer's journey. So how do you take a total stranger who has never heard of you and move them all the way through to becoming a paying client consistently, without ads, without sending cold DMs, and without burning hours, chasing people? You want to become an attractor brand. And the client journey. So once someone's actually paid, how do you retain them? How do you get them real results and turn that into proof that feeds the next round of buyers who are sitting in your ecosystem? If you get both right, the business stops depending on Marcus personally hustling for every single client. You get it wrong, right, and nothing downstream holds up. So if you think of it like a pipeline, everything starts upstream, traffic moves through the pipes, and if there's a blockage, that's going to cause friction, and everything beyond that point is going to suck. So here's the whole machine mapped out end to end. We've got the brand at the top. We've got the traffic mechanism, nurture mechanism, conversion mechanism, delivery, and then trust. So 6 mechanisms, all designed and optimized for seamless flow through and directing traffic exactly where we need it to go when we want it to go there. So no link tree with 5 different links or a website with 23 buttons and pages of boring text with buzzwords or without any value. No, we keep things as simple as possible and we prioritize clarity and simplicity so that they know exactly where to go, what the next step is, and how to get help. So the brand foundations, this sets who we're talking to and what we're promising them. Traffic turns targeted strangers into warm followers. Nurturing builds the trust, the familiarity, handles all the psychological triggers required to adopt the mindset in order to take action. Conversion turns them into a sales call and then turns them into a client. Delivery turns the sale into the result. And trust takes that result and feeds it straight back into the top of funnel as the next piece of content, which is what that dotted line looping back up tells us, right? Back into the marketing here. And, it's not a funnel that empties at the bottom. It's a loop that keeps getting stronger the more people go into it. So here's exactly how we built each part of it. So let's take a look at the marketing machine. The next problem was simple to state but hard to solve, right? How do you keep a calendar full of qualified prospects consistently without paid ads and without chasing anyone? So here's what we didn't do, because this is where most coaches waste their time, their money, and their energy. We didn't have Marcus messing around with ad spend, throwing thousands of dollars at Meta with no guaranteed return. And we didn't have him cold DMing strangers, chasing people down, or begging for a yes. There are still coaches, even business coaches, pushing that one-size-fits-all approach, and it leaves people frustrated, deflated, and even worse off financially than when they started. So here's why cold DMs are completely flawed for online fitness offers specifically. Now think of it like this: cold DMing a stranger and asking if they want to be coached by you is like knocking on $50 in your neighborhood and asking, whoever answers if they'd like to hire you. You would never dream of doing that in person, would you? So it shouldn't suddenly become normal just because there's a screen in front of you. Now, here's why it actually works even less than it sounds like it should. So fitness coaching is not like a business to business sale, right? It is quite a common strategy, cold DM and cold outreach, when you're like working business to business. It's a very clear ROI. The numbers stack up. It makes sense. It's a very logical decision. So of course they're going to say yes if the offer is good. And for, like, let's say it's a service, you're doing outreach or things like that in terms of to clean someone's gutters or mow their lawn. The value is them saving the time and the effort to get the job done. Getting in shape doesn't work like that. It's an emotional decision before it's a logical one. The prospect has to actually do the work themselves, which means they have to buy into you as the leader who can actually guide them through it first. And that kind of buy-in doesn't happen in a DM. It happens in your content over a period of time. So let's talk about ads real quick. And here's why 90% of coaches should avoid ads, at least at the beginning stage. So Meta's job is simple, right? Just give you more eyeballs. That's their entire job. It has zero interest and zero ability to fix what actually happens after the click. So if your positioning is weak, if your funnel's confusing, or the offer doesn't land, ads just mean more people seeing the broken system faster at your expense. You're just going to lose money. So you're pouring fuel on a fire that hasn't even been lit yet. And that's just going to burn your budget. So that's exactly why we build everything else first. We get the systems running organically, and we collect enough real data to see the metrics actually holding up before paid traffic is even on the table. Ads are a scaling tool, not a building tool. So you use them to pour fuel on something that is already proven to convert, not to manufacture outputs that don't even exist yet. So let's take a look at what a system actually is. So you've got the input or the hypothesis. So obviously, let's say we want to get sales calls. We have to deploy a strategy of what we think is going to get sales calls. And then to do the input, you need to follow a process, right? And then as a result of you putting in the inputs, doing the process, you get an output, which is the data point. And then what you need to do over time, if you actually want to get the compounding effect and make it work properly and actually get better over time, is you need to track, review, and optimize it. So this creates like a positive feedback loop where you're doing something, following the process, getting the output as a result of it, and then you're testing and you're iterating over time. So if we take the sales calls, for example, so we want to get sales calls, so we follow this process, right, this framework. Then we get the output. Okay, how many calls are we booking? How many calls are we closing? How many are showing up? Then we track it in like a sales tracker here, see what's working, see what's not, collect the data, and then we can see, okay, where the friction points, what needs improved. And then the next time around, we can implement those into the process. So here's what we did instead of doing these things, either paying for impressions or basically just dealing with cold traffic in general, right? Which is tough. What we did instead was we built Marcus into what I call an attractor brand. Someone who doesn't chase clients, he attracts them. A brand people want to reach out to because they already see him as a trusted authority before they've even spoke to him. So that completely flips the dynamic. Marcus wasn't scrambling to take on who was willing to pay him. He had the luxury of choosing who he actually wanted to work with. People who he knew he could genuinely help and he was actually excited to get results for. So we got there by focusing on two things, which was trust and authority. And the platform that did almost all of the heavy lifting for both was YouTube. So let me show you how that works. YouTube is the king of nurturing. The power of YouTube for coaches is honestly still untapped. I've been banging on about this for ages and still not a lot of people are using it. So Here's why it works so differently to everything else. So people come to YouTube usually actively looking for a solution. They're typing in, how to lose weight, best fitness plan for, busy professionals, whatever it may be. I know that's quite vague, but you get the idea. They've already made the decision that they want help, right? So they go to YouTube to learn, to educate themselves. And they're just deciding, who from. So that's a completely different mindset to someone scrolling through Instagram or TikTok, half paying attention, honestly just doom scrolling and trying to relax. It's a completely different game. So instead of posting random fitness tips or motivational quotes, we built Marcus a content strategy with a real purpose behind every video. 3 things specifically. One was showcase his story and transformation to make him relatable and aspiring to the exact audience who he was trying to target. 2 was educate people up front, delivering real value while subtly pre-selling his approach. And 3 was to nurture them over time and harvest a lot of watch time, so that by the time someone booked a call, they were already sold on him and his process before he even had to say a word to them. And the best part is it was mainly just 2 very simple videos, either a talking head video of just him sat in his car or a more logical breakdown, which was more value driven, which he just used a slideshow deck to create. So simple. And what matters the most is not the fancy editing or anything like that. It's really the psychology and the messaging and the flow of how you present the information behind what you're saying that actually matters. So that's why these simple videos can work really well. And not only that, but they're more authentic and they're more relatable. So instead of just being one of 50 reels that someone scrolls past in a doom scrolling session, Marcus was earning genuine watch time, people sitting down, grabbing a coffee, giving him 20 to 30 minutes of focused attention. That kind of attention doesn't just disappear in someone's head after they click off the app. Like when you watch a reel and it's like one of 50 videos, you forget that within minutes. When you actually sit down and watch a YouTube video, how many YouTube videos are you actually watching a day? Like, not that many, right? So it's more likely to stay front of mind and more likely to kind of make an imprint in your brain and, for you to actually remember them. So that's why YouTube's quite powerful. And the economics back up as well. So you get the title, the thumbnail, and the hook right. And the hook is just the promise of what they get from the video in the first 30 seconds to a minute, when they're subconsciously deciding if they even want to watch this or not. And you pair that with a high ticket offer behind it. And it's niche specific content, which speaks directly to their pain. And then as you start to collect data, you can actually figure out how much revenue are you generating per 1,000 views. And Marcus was generating around 2K per 1,000 views on average within the 3 months of us optimizing this content strategy. And the other reason YouTube compounds where short form doesn't is because a video doesn't just like fade out within 24 hours, or I think it's like maybe 3 days actually. You get this little spike in views. And then after that, unless it goes viral, it just sort of sits at around the same views. It doesn't really get pushed to anyone. YouTube is different because videos that Marcus was posting like weeks or months ago, and I can even speak for this myself as well, is that they were still driving traffic, still nurturing, still booking calls, even though he posted it months ago. And that's happened to me plenty of times as well. Now I track where my calls are coming from, like from what video. And to be honest, ones that I'd made like a year ago were still booking me calls a year later. And the views of said video were quite slow at the start. And then over time, it started to pick up more. So these YouTube videos are like an asset that kind of like as soon as you make it once, it might take you like an hour. That could be quietly booking you calls for months if you get it right. So this is what's genuinely like what I call a leveraged marketing machine. Now, this is exactly what I bang on about all the time. If you see my Instagram bio, it's how I help fitness coaches make online income with leveraged marketing. We want to get the most out of our inputs, and YouTube is a perfect example of that. So it's not about working harder. It's about creating a system that compounds over time when you've already done the work for it. And here's the number that actually matters when you're running this as a business and why YouTube is an absolute cheat code, which is lead to close time. And no one talks about this. Most coaches relying on short form and cold outreach are looking at a lead to close time of like 2 to 3 months because the prospect's still cold when they hit the DMs or the booking link. So half the sales process has to happen live. Like on the call itself, you have to do all the convincing in front of them. And that's when you get a lot of like, I need to think about it and stuff, because you basically force them onto a call too quickly. So the trust building that normally eats months away was already done by the time someone applied or booked, because they'd self-selected after watching 30 to 60 minutes of him. And that's the actual ROI of long form content. It's not just that the leads are better, but it's the shorter, cheaper path from getting a stranger to a client. Like it's cheaper in terms of like the time and effort that you have to put in. But not only that, like these leads come up to the calls much more nurtured, they're much warmer, and they're much easier to close as well. So now that the YouTube strategy is locked in, we want to pair that with a nurturing layer on Instagram and build one continuous ecosystem that kind of feeds one another. So it can bring in new leads daily, and we can ensure that the people that aren't ready to buy straight away, which is probably 97% of people, they're being nurtured consistently, and they're now in your ecosystem being fed content every single day. And they just didn't, they didn't just disappear. So here's roughly how the loop runs. So shorts and reels generate the attention. That's where most of the views come from. Those people get pointed towards YouTube, either through stories or the bio link where your VSL is, which we'll cover in a sec. They get watched, they get nurtured, and then they either book a call directly, or they follow and they stay in the cycle, get nurtured further through content until they're ready. And we're also proactively intercepting warm interest as it occurs using the DMs. So sometimes people would find Marcus through YouTube, and then they would want to do more due diligence, right? By clicking on his Instagram profile in the description of the video, they'd follow him. And then that's where a sales opportunity would begin, because we're reaching out to everyone who show interest. That's not a cold DM. That's just you being proactive and, actually asking someone what it is they're looking for. So, and then a sales call is booked, and then you close the call. And if they don't close, they're not just gone, they're still in the loop. They're still being nurtured. And then if what Marcus sells is genuinely something they want, then it's just a matter of time. It's not a hard no. So here's kind of like the ecosystem view. So we've got traffic coming in through short form. We're directing as much traffic as possible to YouTube. They become a follower. We intercept them with a warm DM. We send them more content. We follow up with them using a follow-up system. We nurture them with stories and call to actions. And you'll notice that everything just leads to book a call here. The loop doesn't end until they booked a call. And if they don't close, they just go back into it. But if they do close, then they become a client, and then we feed those results back into the short form content. So this is also exactly why a few hours of long form content each week can outperform weeks of short form alone. Not only that, but it's much more efficient to create. So after 20 or 30 minutes of watching Marcus, someone already trusts him, they relate to him, and they already have a feel of his personality, and something that short form almost never achieves, or it takes a long time to achieve it because they're just getting small snippets of you. So that mechanism alone lets Marcus convert strangers into clients roughly 10 times faster than coaches relying on Instagram or TikTok as their main channel. Now, let's talk about what actually happens when someone comes into your ecosystem, because this is the part almost no one in this space is actually on top of, unless they're serious online coaches who have invested in mentorships and, have all the systems and the infrastructure. But anyone who's never done that, they're never on top of this, right? The clients who I work with who have never been coached or mentored before, they never have this in place. So every coach can tell you their follower count. Almost none of them can tell you how many of those followers they've actually messaged, how many have replied, how many have agreed to a call, and how many of those calls have landed on their calendar. The conversation just fizzles out somewhere in the inbox. And because there's no system of tracking when it died, it just gets forgotten. And that lead isn't lost because they weren't interested. They're just lost because no one was actually watching the pipeline. So we built Marcus an actual system for it, not just the habit of being active in the DMs, but there was always two kinds of conversations. One is a warm DM, which is one where Marcus starts messaging new followers who look like a good fit. This isn't a cold DM because they've already expressed interest by following him in the first place. The next is an inbound DM, which is kind of the opposite. Someone messages him. So those get prioritized above everyone else because those are the people who are reaching out unprompted. You already hold maximum positioning, and you know for a fact that basically they want what you offer. And another form of inbound DM, which is kind of a less important, but still very important, is that when someone basically comments or DMs you a keyword, usually in return for a resource or a lead magnet. Now the rules underneath it were simple, but they're the ones that almost everyone breaks. Message every new follower unless they're clearly not a fit or they're a bot account or something like that. The second you start assuming who's worth talking to, you start losing money on assumptions that you can't actually verify. So if you're unsure, then message them anyway. And the next one is that it's all about the follow-up. You are a complete stranger on the internet. You're not going to be someone's top priority on message one. People warm up when they see you enough times, they see that you genuinely care. And the only real stop condition is if someone explicitly saying that they're not interested. That would be the only case where you would not follow up with them. And the job in every conversation is finding the gap. So where someone is now, where they actually want to be, and why they haven't actually closed that gap themselves and what they've tried in the past. And then obviously if they want help to get to that goal. The next rule is maintain authority. You want to stay a little vague. It's kind of like dating a little bit, right? If you're sending massive paragraphs to a girl and she's sending short messages, that's instantly going to kill your attraction. So it's the same with Instagram as well. You have to kind of match their energy a little bit. You don't want to seem too keen. So, if you just start coaching people in DMs or trying to explain every feature of the program, they're just going to lose respect for you and lose interest within a click of a finger. So curiosity is actually what gets someone to book a call. So you're always trying to create curiosity and an incentive to take the next step. So in the DMs, all you're trying to do is incentivize the call. You're not trying to sell your program at that stage. And, because if you give away everything up front, like all the details, then they've got no reason to actually progress to the next step. They can just make their mind up in the moment. So the last thing is that every single lead needs to go into a tracker, no exceptions. That's what makes the rest of this actually work and gives you the data and the sales pipeline to continuously close clients when they're actually ready to be closed. So the pipeline itself runs in 4 stages. We've got initiated, which is the first message that goes out. We've got engaged, which is if they reply. We've got calendar lead, which is if they agreed to book a call. And then we've got booked, is if they're actually booked and they've landed on your calendar. So every single lead sits in one of these stages at any one given time, which means Marcus always knows precisely how many conversations are alive and exactly where each one is stalling and what people to put more attention onto. And because every stage is tracked, every stage has a number attached to it as well. So we've got things like media seen rate, like how many messages are you sending out and they're actually seeing the message but maybe not replying. We've got the positive reply rate, which is how many people compared to how many messages you've sent have actually replied. We've got the Calendly sent rate, which is how many people in the conversation agreed to take the call. Then we've got the appointment booking rate, which is like how many people out of how many people you've messaged have actually booked a call. And then that allows you to see all the conversion rates, not only compared to how many messages you've sent in that month in total, but also between the stages as well. So you can identify potential bottlenecks. So that's kind of the whole point of building it this way, without you acting on your feelings, like, oh, the DMs aren't working. That's a feeling. With this, it's a diagnosis. You can see whether the problem is visibility, the opener, the follow-up, the offer itself, instead of just guessing and hoping that the next message lands better. Or even worse, having a completely unique conversation with every single person. You can't track that. You can't track how effective that is, and you don't remember. So you need to follow a framework and you need to track the data as well. So here's a little view of our tracker. There's a dashboard tab, and then there's like a monthly view tab where you put all the leads and you can see what stage they're in. But this is the dashboard, which gives you all the data for the whole year, which is super valuable. Because ultimately your sales pipeline is where most of your sales are going to be made. Yes, you're going to get calls booked through YouTube, but most likely you're going to intercept people when they're warm through Instagram. And that's how you're going to build up this pipeline of people who you can sell to in a week and a month, whatever it may be, however long it takes. But by you showing you care and showing up and taking interest in them personally and nurturing the relationship, then if they want what you sell, then they will become a client eventually, because I can guarantee you that rarely coaches are doing this properly. So it's the people that are following up and showing genuine care and actually talking to people who are making the most money and onboarding the most clients. So Here's the thing about sales that most coaches get wrong before they even get someone on the phone. Their process creates confusion instead of clarity. So, most of us are hard workers, right? But if you don't have the right systems and processes in place, then you're just going to create confusion for not only yourself, but the people coming into your ecosystem as well. All right, next we're going to talk about the Trojan Horse VSL method. Now, most coaches think they need some fancy website. They don't. You're not an e-commerce brand. You don't need a checkout page or an inquiry form to look more professional. It just wastes time, money, and does nothing for your close rate and booking rate. The real problem with a website is that it usually hands people too many options, too many paths to follow, too many services to choose from. So more doesn't feel better to a buyer. It feels like overwhelm. It feels like you're trying to appeal to too many people. And it just ultimately gives them analysis paralysis. It creates overwhelm and people don't take action. They put it off. So that's where leads quietly slip through the cracks. The simple fix is a single streamlined path that leads people straight to the one high ticket offer that you actually want to sell. Not some low ticket app or like secondary product that's nice to have, but it's not ideally what you want. You want to be pushing everyone in the most frictionless path towards the thing that you want to sell the most. Can you downsell someone after they get to that path and maybe they can't afford it or whatever? Of course, but we don't want anything getting in the way of that main flagship offer. Only if they're definitely not going to be a good fit for that, would you then downsell them to something to try and create some revenue from the call still. So you want to direct people to the offer that you want to sell the most, that generates the most cash flow. And when the process feels simple and intentional and aligned with what they want, and it sounds exactly what was built specifically for them, then you get that little light bulb moment and naturally they feel more confident about working with you. So that's how a funnel should be. It should be simple, not complicated or expensive. And I even call it an invisible funnel because the Trojan Horse VSL is called a Trojan Horse VSL because it's like a free training video. It's not like a typical salesy video or anything like that. But yeah, with a website, you don't need a landing page. You don't need elite copywriting or professional design. You just need to keep things authentic and simple. People will relate to you more. So actually, your Instagram page is your website. Just keep a clean, consistent theme across your socials and move on. That's all you need. So what you actually need is messaging and human connection. And that's not a page, that's a video. And here's something that goes against what most coaches assume is we didn't use an application either. So I find that applications are massively overused right now. Every coach is leaning on one as their main conversion tool, which means it doesn't help you stand out. It does the opposite. An application isn't a value-driving mechanism. That's the problem. It doesn't build trust. It doesn't build authority, and it doesn't build excitement. It's just a barrier to entry, right? So here's the part most people miss. We weren't skipping the qualification. We were just refusing to make someone jump through it twice. By the time someone books a call, the Calendly step already asks helpful qualifying questions that would otherwise just sit inside of an application. So the application doesn't get removed and replaced with nothing. It just gets folded into a step that was already happening anyway. So there's one less barrier, same amount of screening. We're still qualifying people. We're just removing the friction. So here's what we built instead, a video sales layer. So it's not just any old video. It's a conversion mechanism. And it gives the prospect massive upfront value, helps them understand your process, and gets them genuinely excited to book a call, all before you've even ever spoke to them. So it's the copywriting, the credibility, and the pitch delivered all as one piece of content, not just like a full page of text that no one actually reads. And the great thing about all this is it's very subtle and they don't even know that you're doing it. They just see it as a really valuable video. So this positions you as the expert and builds a lot of trust up front before you ask anything of them. So by the time someone books a call after watching, they've already heard your story, connected with your philosophies, and they see how the program works on a logical level, and they're emotionally bought in because you're showing proof. So the VSL has 3 jobs: position markers as the trusted authority through storytelling, deliver real usable value up front so prospects walk away with something even if they never book a call, and 3 is subtly pre-sell the offer without feeling pushy or salesy. So that's why it's like a Trojan horse. From the outside, it's just pure value. Underneath, every single part of it is intentional, and that's the whole point. It builds goodwill first and then asks for something second instead of the other way around. And placement mattered just as the content itself. It couldn't just be a video someone stumbled across. It needed to sit as the bridge between the trust built through content and the decision to book a call. So we placed it deliberately. One place is in the Instagram bio with a clear call to action. So one of the first things any new profile visitor sees is that value-driven call to action, and then they get led to a long-form video. It gets placed as the featured video on the YouTube channel. So anyone let's say they find you through a different video and they go to check out your profile, boom, your VSL is right there in front of them. And then we referenced with a call to action inside his other YouTube video descriptions, which acted as like subtopics and then fed to the main VSL. So obviously he's making videos of subtopics relating to his transformation. And then in the description under the book a call link, within those other videos, we're obviously trying to drive people to the VSL, which kind of encompasses the whole transformation. So instead of a website with a maze of options, the funnel just simply looked like this. Dialed in ICP and offer at the top, consistent short form traffic, people land on the Instagram profile, see the stories in the content, get pointed to the VSL, which delivers real value up front and does the separating from the crowd, right? Qualifies for him. Calls get booked either straight from YouTube or through the warm DM process. They buy, they get results, and then those results get fed back into the content. So one thing to actively avoid here is shiny object syndrome. We obviously keep things very frictionless, very seamless, very direct, very simple. But the problem with most coaches is they see this thing that gets marketed to them, whether it's through ads or whatever. They think that's the next best thing because they don't know otherwise and they're naive. And then they hop strategies all the time. They change their offers, they change their funnels, they change their strategies, and then they wonder why nothing compounds and they don't get the results that they want. So the temptation to keep adding new things is exactly what's going to break this and is what's going to stop you from getting results. So now so it's very simple. There's two call paths here, one from YouTube, one from Instagram, as we said. And the manual step matters more than it looks like it does. A generic booking link in a bio with no conversation first means that anyone can book regardless of intent, and show rates suffer for it. Manual talking to leads first means you uncover what they actually need, which lets you keep the conversation focused on their real desires and their real pain points. And then you can use that as leverage to incentivize the next step, like what I said earlier. So why does the path one skip the manual conversation entirely and still work? This is an important nuance. It's because by the time someone's binge watched 20 to 30 minutes of Marcus's content, most of that qualifying has already happened without either of them even saying a word to each other. So they've already kind of self-selected and they understand the offer and they've made the decision to book largely on their own. And the Calendly questionnaire on the way in still catches anyone who isn't a good fit. So no one slips through who's actually unqualified. And it shows in the numbers as well. The leads that come straight from YouTube close at a higher percentage than the leads that come through the DMs path. So on Instagram DMs, people tend to be a lot colder. So having that human touch point, that human conversation is the perfect bridge between the call. On YouTube, because it's so powerful and nurtures people at such a high velocity, you don't really need to have that conversation. You just need to have a filter that makes sure that the right people are actually booking calls and you're not going to waste your time. When a stranger's watched potentially hours of your content and decided for themselves that it's worth their time and is simply further along than someone who was manually warmed up over a handful of messages anyway. So the people that come through YouTube, much better, much easier to close. Now the DM path still works and it's actually where most of your clients are going to come from. And it's still necessary for those who don't make it to YouTube. Some people might find you through Instagram. But YouTube is doing a lot of heavy lifting on the conviction side, which is why you'll notice in that ecosystem diagram is when we actually proactively reach out to people, we're understanding their situation, and then we're sending them long form content before we even ask them to hop on a call. So again, we're creating a lot of goodwill without sort of expecting anything in return. And that way, that after you've actually educated and given them a lot of value, they're always much more willing to hop on a call with you anyway. So we've got YouTube, Instagram in place, working in sync. You've got the ecosystem running in full motion. Now it's like, okay, you're getting calls booked, but you need people to actually show up to the calls. So booking the call is only half the problem, right? You have to actually get them to show up as well. And this is where people bleed leads as well. Like someone doesn't show up and then they just get ignored. So this splits into two pieces. One is a page built once, which just runs automatically for every booking. And the other is a manual sequence that is done manually through you or through a closer or whatever for every single call, no exceptions. So the first bit is a confirmation page, which is the thing that they get redirected to the second that they book the call. So leaving it blank is a big mistake because all they'll get is a plain like "you're confirmed" message with nothing on it. So it's basically just like a brick wall. It kind of kills the momentum a little bit. So instead we have this sort of like confirmation page, which has like a pre-call video, which sets expectations properly, killing the one fear every lead walks in with, which is, am I going to get pitched to? Telling them this isn't a sales call, it's a conversation about your situation. You get a game plan whether or not we work together or not. Just basically setting the expectations about what to expect on the call and how to best prepare for it. Then we want to also nudge people to YouTube, of course, because we want them to watch as much content as possible before they hop on a call. So this is kind of for those analytical types who want more proof before they commit. And your YouTube is an absolute goldmine. It's going to educate them. It's going to show case studies, client interviews, all this sort of stuff. So we want them to binge watch that before the call. The next sort of section is the testimonials and results. And it's not to persuade. The persuading already happened, but this is more to like reassure, to show them that they are in the right place. They made a good decision, which keeps them moving forward and it keeps them feeling positive about the call. And then the last section is a frequently asked questions. So this is not only going to harvest more watch time for you, but strategically you can position your offer and tackle objections before the call even starts. So that same video also quietly closes off the practical reasons about why calls get missed. Confirming the invite on their calendar, making sure it didn't go into spam, naming a real fallback if something comes up, like giving them a line of communication in case they need to reschedule or whatever, and just being able to flag anything early. Like we mentioned, if they have a partner who is supporting them on this journey, just make sure that they turn up to the call as well so they can understand and things like that. And the manual side is shorter, and it's just basically your workflow for what happens after someone books. But a lot of coaches skip this entirely. Like someone books and they just assume they're going to show up. So what we do, what Marcus did was, it's basically a few hours after they book, you just want to create that human touch point. Send out a little voice note and basically just confirm the slot. Tell them that, look, if you've got any questions, I'm here, my inbox is open, and just kind of create that line of communication. Then we want to check in 24 to 48 hours that kind of asks a real question that gets a reply. And the reply is kind of like a recommitment. It's not just like a random automated reminder. And then what we do as well is we send out the Zoom link manually by hand a few hours before the call. So it's not in there. So it's the most recent message in their inbox, and it's not just from some random email. We're actually delivering it to them manually a few hours before, which is plenty of time. Like if they know that they can't turn up to the call, then they've got a real opportunity to say so. So automation carries the page, real person carries the DMs. Together, that creates a show rate of around 90%. So you don't need to get any more complicated than this. Something to note as well is that we do have the Calendly email sequences and text reminders set up as well, but that should just be done as, that's just basic stuff. But this stuff here is what really gets people to show up, because people are kind of numb to automated reminders. So we want to create that human touch point, and we want to create that confirmation page, which gives them loads of context, loads of proof, loads of reassurance, and keeps that excitement high straight after the booking. All right, so we've handled show rate. Now let's move on to the sales process itself. This is where a lot of coaches lose deals that they should have closed, either by winging it completely or by coming across too salesy. So we built Marcus a simple, structured framework, not a rigid script. This difference matters a lot. A script is going to make you sound robotic, whereas a framework gives you a path to follow so you know the information that you're trying to dig into and collect along the way, but it gives you that freedom to make sure that you are prioritizing an authentic conversation. So by the time someone actually got on the call, everything that happened before the call put Marcus in an incredibly strong position, strong enough that he went on an 8-call close streak with 3K fitness packages. So here's the actual structure. Step 1, we want to acquire micro commitments from the start. We want to confirm that they do have the length of time the call is going to take. And this theme runs through the entire call, by the way, just always collecting micro commitments, small yeses, which kind of programs them into leaning in, but also just makes them feel like they're in control as well. We want to set the tone. So this is super important. If you don't do this and you get a type A personality, they're just going to walk all over you. So right from the get-go, it's not your job to be happy and smiley and people pleaser energy. No, it's like, this is a serious conversation that could potentially change their lives. So you need to set the tone about how the conversation is going to go, what they should expect. And if you do that well, then they'll let you lead. But this also just reassures people, and then they'll be more likely to sit back and relax, let you lead. And then even the more confident, ego-driven prospects tend to settle down if you nail this one point. 3 is discovery. So we're trying to get as much information as possible. This is where you're gathering the ammunition that you'll use later, both for the pitch and to also create leverage, right, when it gets uncomfortable. Now, the future pitch or bridging the gap, now that you know where they are, you need to dig into why they want to get to where they're going and what does it actually change in their life. And that's what establishes the gap that basically you're selling the bridge to. The qualification decision. So when you've acquired the ammunition, like where they're currently at, where it is they're looking to go, what are the obstacles stopping them from getting there, what they've tried in the past, why they want to get to that goal, what's going to change in their life as a result of that, things like that, then you can make a decision as to, can you actually confidently get this people results? Are they actually a good fit for you? Because the whole point of selling authentically and ethically is you should say no to some people. If you genuinely don't think you're the best person for the job, then you shouldn't take them into your program. You want to keep your program as clean as possible with great clients who you enjoy working with, who are committed, who are the right fit. Especially if you've got a community as well, then you just getting in any kind of person is going to really water down the experience for them. Keeping the program exclusive, it's not about ego. It's just protecting your own ability to deliver and also protecting the quality of the program for other clients. So 6 is, if they are a good fit, then you'll ask them if they want to see how you get results for people. So this is the logical breakdown where you walk them through how it works, what the roadmap looks like. And you're basically using the ammunition that you gathered from the discovery phase, and you're trying to focus on the stuff and the words that they said to you. So for example, if you're going through 5 different things and really only the thing that they care most about was like points 2 and 4, then obviously you'd want to just brush over the other points a little bit just so they have context, but you'd really want to dive deep into how your way of doing things is going to solve that thing that they're struggling with. And then by the time you reach price, it should feel like the obvious next step rather than a pitch, right? Because you've handled all their beliefs, their objections up front. You've shown them exactly how it works. They have all the information. So this is why me and my clients never really get, I need to think about objections, because we've designed everything, like from the content all the way to when you reveal the price in a very specific way that handles everything. The only thing that's not in your control is like their finances. But that's a good place to be because it means you've handled everything else already. So another thing to remember is you need to position this as a new opportunity, not a repeat of what's already failed. So this is when you need to be a little bit versatile, a little bit flexible, and you need to have the skill of being able to tailor what you're selling to exactly what they need. Because if you just pitch someone the same generic thing every single time without actually customizing it to them, then obviously they're going to be more likely to want to go to somewhere better that's more tailored to them, right? Then we do the temp check, which is right before the price. So we just want to confirm they understand why it works, handle any lingering concerns, so that by the time you get to revealing the number, the only objection left is outside of your control, as I said, finances. Then what we do is we use a weighted pricing structure. So you'll remember before, we do the 3-month and the 6-month option. And obviously the 6-month is much better value than the 3-month. And that's obviously by design. We've engineered it that way. So we should present it as a choice between 2 good options, not a yes or a no. That completely flips the psychology. Because instead of them processing, should I do it or should I not, they're processing which option should I choose, which is a completely different dynamic there. So we're anchoring the price towards the thing that we want to sell the most, which is the 6-month package. And the data on this is that 80% of people tend to go for the 6-month option. So this price anchoring is definitely the best solution. But not only that, we know as fitness coaches that 3 months is probably the minimum amount of time it will take to see a reasonable change or transformation. So that's why we're not enabling people with low commitment by just defaulting to a monthly payment. Because realistically, if they truly want to get to their goal, right, we as the expert know what that takes, then we need to be doing it based on the outcome, which is 3 months or 6 months. And realistically, 6 months is kind of like the sweet spot where it's not too much commitment in the future, but it's like just the perfect amount of time where they can get the transformation, and then you can deliver a reasonable amount of aftercare in order to help them develop the skills of being able to sustain this transformation in the long run. So none of this works in isolation. It's the accumulation of everything before it, the positioning, the content, the VSL, the nurturing. And by the time someone's on the call, most of the actual persuading has already happened. So you don't really need to do that much objection handling. It's more just figuring out the logistics. So with these calls, we want to turn it into market data. So every call, Marcus, gets recorded and transcribed automatically through something called Fathom, which is an AI note taker that you can connect to Zoom, which automatically transcribes and summarizes all your Zoom calls without you having to lift a finger. So the transcript on its own doesn't do anything. The value comes from what happens after it. So every call gets logged into a sales tracker. The outcome, the objections raised, what stage they came from, whether they closed or not. It's going to give you your close rate and all this sort of stuff. So instead of a folder of individual conversations, right, if you were just saving the transcripts, we're actually going to have a real data set here. So not only are we going to see the data, the sales data itself, but we're going to be able to see the market data that then we can use back into our content. So once a month, that's what we do. The data actually gets used, not just collected. So we pull the patterns out of it. Which objections showed up? What limiting beliefs did people have? And where in the call did people hesitate? Those friction points that we could maybe handle in a better way. And here's the part that most coaches never do. That data doesn't stay inside the sales process. It goes upstream into the marketing, into the content plan, into the VSL itself. And if the same objection is showing up every single week, then you actually have to handle it in your marketing better. Because ultimately, the job of marketing is to have people adopt the right beliefs and the right mindset in order to effortlessly want to take action on your solution. That's it. All you're doing is marketing to people so that they take action, and you're trying to reduce the friction in the systems as possible. So it's not a sales problem anymore. It's a marketing one. It's a sign that it should have been pre-handled in a video 3 steps earlier before the prospect got anywhere near a call. And this is the key that people don't get about having a really good close rate on high ticket packages. Is a lot of it comes down to the marketing. And most online fitness coaches, they're great coaches, but they're not good marketers, unfortunately. So that's the whole point of tracking this, is that we get to keep feeding real market data back into the parts of the machine that run before the call. So the call itself gets easier every single month, instead of relying purely on Marcus just getting better objection handling, which is very like trying to fix the symptom as opposed to the root cause. And if you fix the root cause, then obviously you don't have to keep repeating the same thing over and over again. So the common objections, and by the way, this doesn't mean someone doesn't want the program. Like parting with thousands of dollars is never comfortable for anyone. It's just that fight or flight looking for reassurance. So money objection, right? It's simple. Like we always just say the price up front. It doesn't mean we can't do monthly payments, but a lot of coaches like default to monthly payments. So they're leaving a lot of money on the table. But not only that, is they're doing the clients a bit of a disservice as well, because statistically, the ones who are more financially bought in and emotionally invested, they have more of a fire under their ass, and their mindset is much more tailored to wanting to get their money's worth, as opposed to having an escape route. So you're doing them a disservice, because the ones that you just let in like really easily, they might not get the results that they would have done had you structured the pricing like this and create an environment where you're actually supporting them getting to the outcome. So offer the payment plan, just have a conversation about logistics. How much can they invest in this? And just break it down into something that's actually doable for them. So next is that I need to speak to a partner. And by the way, the guarantee can really help with your close rate as well. And like I said before, it's a performance guarantee. It's basically no risk to you, assuming that you're not making any wild promises. I need to check with my partner. You just need to take a deposit or rebook the call. This is why we try and handle this On the confirmation page, you can also ask a question about their support network in the discovery phase as well. And if you can try and get an idea of what's going on around them, who's supporting them, who relies on them financially, things like that. But you can get an idea of how supportive they are. Do they know they're on a call? Do they know they're looking for a solution? And then all these things give you the ammunition for them to go ahead with it anyway. And you can basically just say, look, if it is genuinely a big problem, I'll just give you your money back or whatever. So you can have a clause in your agreement that's like, if you want to cancel or terminate the contract and not go ahead with it, you can do that within 3 days. It means that they can figure out logistics, talk to their partner, and if their partner really doesn't want them to do it and they don't want to go against their word, then they can just get their money back. Simple. Then you've need more time to think about it. The guarantee already removes most of the risk, so this usually collapses on its own once it's repeated back to them. And to be honest, we don't really get a lot of these ones anyway, just because of the way we've designed everything. As I said before, it's literally only like money objection, to be honest. If you get like, I need to think about it and stuff like that, to be honest, that's usually more of a smoke screen, to be honest. It's not the real objection. It's probably because your positioning sucks. They don't have enough certainty by the time you actually drop the price, all this sort of stuff. You've basically just not handled all the beliefs they need. You've not positioned your offer in the right way that makes it the best solution for them, or you've not tailored the pitch so that it directly solves the problems that they need, so they think, yep, this is exactly what I need. It's mainly psychology, and you've just not handled stuff in the right way. That's obviously why we engineer it in this way. But remember, it's your job to be the calm, grounded leader they need in order to make a logical decision. And most people are not thinking logically at that moment. So you have to remember that. And I'm coming back to selling authentically and ethically here, but by this point, if you're even at the point of making them an offer and dropping the price, you should have 100% confidence that this is exactly what this person needs. So you have to be that calm person who can just talk them through it logically and understand how they feel, be empathetic. But if you know that this is truly going to change their life, then you have to be the leader who can guide them there. And often that's the first step of the service, is you being that person, being that leader, because obviously, ultimately, that's what a coach is, a leader, and just being able to talk them through it. And if you do that well, then they're going to have a crazy amount of respect for you before they've even started the program. I can't tell you the amount of times where I've done that and they've actually thanked me for it like a week later when they've started working on the program and getting results and things like that. They actually thank you for it. So their respect for you will go up a lot. If you just try and people please and say, yeah, no worries, take your time, think about it, they're more likely to subconsciously just see you as a pushover, to be honest. So you have to be confident and have 100% conviction in what you sell can nothing short of change their life. And that's the kind of mindset that you have to have. And you have to be a genuinely good coach as well. So yeah, so like I was saying, morally, you should have disqualified them by this stage if you genuinely didn't believe that this is going to change their life. And all you're doing is using exactly what they've told you in order to guide them in the right direction. That's it. So if objections keep showing up consistently, it's usually one of these: not enough long-form content building belief before the call, not digging deep enough into the why, the confidence and the attention, not just, oh, I want abs. But you have to get deeper into the emotional reasons why they want to do this. You spent too much time explaining things that the prospect didn't actually say that they cared about, and you weren't repeating their own situation back to them clearly enough for them to feel like, oh, wow, this guy understands my situation better than I do. Okay, sales done, right? You're booking calls, you're getting clients. Now, obviously, we're on to the back-end engine now, fulfilling on the service and onboarding. You can generate leads, book calls, close deals all day long, but if you can't actually retain people, get them results, then the business is just going to die anyway. Just slower and more expensively than if you were to never have built the funnel in the first place. So before this side of things existed, most of Marcus's capacity would have just been eaten by one-to-one sessions and scattered notes in his head. And that doesn't scale. So you only have so many hours in a day. And this is why people get bogged down so much when they're selling low ticket by the client fulfillment side, and then they get trapped and their business isn't scalable. So we want to make sure that you're not working on memory. The business is actually scalable and you can actually handle a lot of clients. So the first thing we built wasn't just like a training plan. It was a whole system for holding all the information a coach would normally be trying to remember, so that it's predictable and it's not chaos. So I call it the client OS, one asset that tracks the progress and the situation of every client in one place, contact details, start date, payment details, renewals, testimonials collected, and critically, a risk status. So this is like your main hub where you can see every single client and how they're doing in one view. So every client starts on red, no exceptions. Not because they're a bad fit or they're a bad client, but because the first 2 weeks are like unproven territory for anyone. And these people need the most support because we're taking them into new territory and we're just basically trying to get them into the flow of how online coaching actually works. From there, they move to amber, which is mostly consistent, right? The odd slip here and there, but they're still engaged. They're still working hard. Then we've got green. They're just completely locked in. These are the best clients. They just do everything you ask them to do. They barely need any managing. And based on how onboarding and the first few check-ins actually go, you should get a good idea of who these clients actually are. So that single status is what tells Marcus where his attention needs to go each day. Instead of guessing, or worse, spreading it evenly across people who don't actually need it and people who are quietly about to drop off and not getting the attention they need, or you're just simply spending time trying to check up on people who don't need it and just want to get on with it. So it's 2 tabs, this asset, and obviously DM me on Instagram if you want it. But tab 1 is the live CRM. So this is where we see all the active clients. Tab 2 is the churned clients. And this second tab is the one that almost no coach bothers to build, even if most don't even have the first tab, to be honest. But here's why it matters. When someone leaves, most coaches just let them disappear. No record of it, no follow-up, no idea why, and they just fade off. And they just assume that's it. So that's a double loss right there. You lose the client, but you also lose the only data that could have told you whether, like, how you could have made your program better, or how you could have maybe handled these beliefs or these problems in your content to help others do the same. So instead every churned client gets logged, how long they stayed, what they paid, what the reason was that they left, and in their own words where possible, not a guess, right? So the reason gets used 2 ways. So not only can you figure out what your churn rate is, which is the percentage of your active clients who leave every month, which you want to keep below 5%, but you can see, okay, what's my average lifetime value of all the clients that I've ever worked with? That is super valuable data, especially when you start to run ads. Because if you know your average lifetime value, okay, I need to make sure that the amount that it's costing me to acquire a client is like 1 to 3. Let's say your average lifetime value is 3K and you're running ads and your cost to acquire a client is 1K, boom, you can scale it. So yeah, it just allows you to track the data of your fulfillment and things like that. So first, as pattern data, right, if the same reason keeps showing up, that's not bad luck. That's a signal upstream, whether it's onboarding, expectations, delivery, basically how you run your program, something needs fixing. Second, as a live follow-up list, so a scheduled sequence of check-ins after they've left, because someone who's churned for timing or money reasons isn't necessarily gone forever. They're just not a client right now. But they're obviously very warm. They know how you operate. You have a relationship with them. So if they want to get back into it in the future, you're obviously going to be the first person they come to, assuming you nurture the relationship and you show that you care regardless, even though they're not inside your program. That is so key. And without a system logging these things, they don't become a future sign-up. They just vanish from existence the moment they stop paying you. So tab 1, client OS, general details, risk assessment, payment details, last check-in, whether they renewed, reviews, testimonials, you can log everything here. And then tab 2 is the churn log, where we can see how much they paid you, reason for leaving, whether you followed up with them, notes that you might need to refer back to. And this will have like their goals on there, things like that. All of this stuff that you don't have to remember, like any personal notes, goals that they had when they came on board, all this stuff that you just want to have front of your mind every time you open this, so you can always refer back to it and check up on them about various different things. Next is onboarding. So this is treated as the most important 2 weeks in the entire program, to be honest. Like, not a formality before the real coaching starts. Like, first impressions compound. Nail it and the client walks in already leaning positive, which makes them forgiving when something inevitably goes slightly wrong. And it's so much easier to if something goes wrong, but you made a really great first impression, they'll forgive that so easily. It's not a big deal. If you make a bad first impression, it's often really hard to come back from that. That's why onboarding is such an important piece of the puzzle, and it can really set the tone and allow you to retain clients for a long time. So if you botch it, like I said, then you're going to spend the rest of the relationship swimming upstream, trying to undo that first impression. Now, the moment someone signs, they should never be left wondering what's next. That's the worst case scenario. So within minutes of the sale call ending, they need to be sent to an onboarding funnel, or at the very least, you need to send them a Loom video or a welcome message, a welcome email, telling them exactly what's expected of them and what's going to happen. They need to have complete clarity about how the first 2 weeks is going to work until they get into the flow of things and they know what to do. So they need to have the steps set out. They need to fill out one of the first steps will be like an onboarding survey. So you can obviously get an idea of dietary needs, injuries, like what's actually motivating them, what their goals are. And then you should always have a little kickoff call as well. So the kickoff call is where Marcus makes the impression that carries the whole relationship. So walking through their plan with them, telling them how it works, telling them like how to be a good client, and actually just explaining, look, here's the workflow for the week. Here's what you need to do. Here's what my responsibilities are, and also map out like a roadmap as well. So from there, the client journey runs across 5 phases, which makes up the self-mastery blueprint. Onboarding, which is obviously all the basic stuff that needs to happen when they come on board. Design, which is like the roadmap, the custom plans, any habit selection needs to happen, having a look at what their strengths and weaknesses are, and just making sure that everything is tailored to them. Then we've got optimize. So then that's like the weekly check-ins, the adjustments, dialing in the training and nutrition plan, addressing sleep, stress, mood, tracking the data, and actually seeing, okay, what's the baseline? Where do we need to get it to in order to put you in the best and strongest position to get to the outcome? Then we've got transform. So you want to maintain momentum here, little milestones. Obviously, they've got this grand vision of what they want, but you have to be able to turn that into smaller chunks, smaller milestones, make it feel more realistic and manageable. And then we've got thrive, which is celebrating the wins, building the next vision, making sure that they're always thinking like 5 steps ahead of where they are now to keep them excited. And that also sets you up really nicely for a renewal conversation as well. So the roadmap itself is never one big, long grind. We're not just bringing them on board and saying, here's the goal, let's do it. You need to break it down into smaller phases, mapped around real events in someone's life, tied to actual dates, not just like fixed blocks. So that matters more than it sounds like it should. Motivation is highest the day someone joins, obviously. And it naturally fades as the novelty wears off. And also life gets in the way. And the original why, their motivational drivers, stops being top of mind. So that's why by you knowing all this stuff, when you onboard them, you're always going to be able to remind them of it in the times where it counts. And if left unmanaged, that's how a slow leak slowly starts to push them towards dropping out. So you want to break the same journey into smaller sprints with a breather between each, little maintenance phases, diet breaks. Because if they have a checkpoint in sight, instead of staring down like 5 months of low calories with no relief, it's the same destination and you're basically just setting them up for failure. So the weekly check-in, which is usually like a Loom video, to be honest, it depends on the client. Some people who need a bit more support and a bit more accountability, you'll probably want to do a Loom video. Something I never recommend if you want a scalable online coaching business is weekly calls. You're going to bog down. For one, it's not even necessary. It's just talking for the sake of it. But 2, it's really going to bog you down and take up a lot of your time. The kind of sweet spot is, let's say it's a client who's doing really well. They're killing it, crushing it. They just need a quick voice note. If it's someone who, everyone else, I would say it needs to be like a Loom video, which can just be like 5 minutes long, where you would basically just look at their data, see if any adjustments need made, and basically send it over to them. And the good thing about this is it's scalable, because let's say check-in day is like a Sunday. You can do everyone's Loom check-in on a Monday, all at one time, and then it's done. So this is why you obviously monitor progress, give feedback, adjustments, and anticipate what's coming ahead. So you always want to have a finger on the pulse of what potential obstacles are coming up, so you can catch it and make sure that their mindset is in a good place as it starts to come up. So you're always like 3 steps ahead. And the third one that most coaches skip entirely, and there's a difference between catching an obstacle before it derails someone versus finding out after the damage is done is delivery follows the same shape every time. What went well, reinforced specifically. What could be even better, framed as an opportunity, not a criticism, and having clear, specific targets for the week ahead. Never more than a client can actually hold on to. You need to keep things really simple, not throw everything at them at once, but just optimize small little things at once. So you also want them to confirm that they've actually understood. So when you've sent them the check-in, if they've not responded to you, you want to follow up and make sure that they actually understand what the targets are for the week ahead and what's important, because you always want to make sure that their focus is in the right place at all times. So you just send that as a video and make sure you get a response from them. And you can also summarize it on WhatsApp as well, just so they have it in text format. They can refer back to it easily, but then also they've got the video that goes into more detail at the time of the check-in. So between check-ins, touch points, the amount you send is aligned with the risk level, not to guesswork. So red clients, you kind of need to be doing daily contact with them, to be honest. Amber, they get a couple times a week, and green barely gets touched at all. Just let them get on with it. Because hovering over someone who's already locked in doesn't really help them. It just becomes noise. It feels like you're babysitting them, and we don't want that. So that's the entire point of tracking risk status in the first place, is it turns staying on top of clients from a vague intention into actionable daily 15-minute task with a clear priority order. We also want a good referral system. So delivered at the end of the kickoff call, you can have it in the onboarding form. You might have a community where you have training modules. You just want to make sure it's front of mind, and it's front of mind regularly. So we don't want this just in the welcome email or something. We want it somewhere that they're going to see regularly, but also make sure that it's fully explained and they know exactly how it works when they join your program as well. And you can kind of frame this in a way that, like, if you make a really good first impression, the first check-in, you can frame it as, do you know anyone else who would be interested in joining you on this journey? So you're hitting them with it early and you're planting the seed, and it kind of makes it more fun for them as well because they get to do it with someone else. So we've systemized this. We put it in the right places so that he doesn't have to remind anyone, like on the check-ins and things like that. But yeah, none of this needs to be complicated. So the software stack behind it is just a handful of simple tools doing exactly one job each, nothing fancy, because clients aren't paying for the tech. Like, people get so carried away with, I need a personalized app that I need to pay $5,000 for. I don't know how much they cost because I've never bought one, I've never needed one, and none of my clients have ever needed one. It's just people getting carried away with perfectionism and like trying to make the perfect program before they've even gotten client feedback in the first place. At the end of the day, people just want the result. That's it. So you just need to keep things simple and scalable. You don't need to pay a lot of money or anything like that. If you're making 100K per month and you really want to, you have 80% profit margins, then sure, go ahead. It's not going to hurt the brand, obviously. But people are jumping into stuff like this before they've even made any money, and it's silly. So the software stack, right? Automation's not that necessary, but later on, when you want to start using automations to become a little bit more scalable and to help you out with like repeatable processes, I recommend Zapier. There is other more complicated ones, but Zapier is probably the most simple. Screen recording for your check-ins and things like that, or the welcome video, Loom, or I use Teller. That's what I'm using right now. Communication, WhatsApp is perfect, or sometimes people use Slack. If you use WhatsApp personally and you want to keep your community and clients separate, you could use like Telegram or Slack, something like that. File storage, so you just might have modules in there, any resources. You can have a shared drive that you can give to clients. Training app, so I recommend OneFit, but obviously there's like EverFit, Trainerize. Like, clients come to me already using stuff, and like, I'm not going to change something that isn't broken. But if someone comes to me and they want my personal recommendation based on what I use as a client, because I've got my own coach, so I can focus on my business, and someone can just handle all my nutrition and training and check-ins for me. I know how OneFit works on the client side, and OneFit is also what I used to use when I was a fitness coach as well. So I know it does the job, I know it's good, and the people behind it are good founders. Basically, what they wanted to do was almost have a sweet spot between Google Sheets, which is very customizable. A lot of great coaches in the UK still use Google Sheets because it can be completely customized to exactly what you need it to do. But then also you've got these more corporate ones like Trainerize and things like that, which are user-friendly, but they're not as customizable. The use cases aren't quite as good sometimes. So it's one fits like the best of both worlds. So I highly recommend it. Then obviously we've got video calls, which you would use Zoom, and it's as simple as that. And then obviously Fathom to record your calls. But with Zoom, you need a subscription. That's the only thing. You can use Google Meets as well if you'd prefer, which is free, I believe. But yeah, if you use Zoom, make sure you have the subscription or else you're going to run out of free minutes. But yeah, that's the whole point of building the fulfillment this way. Growth stops being like parallel with the amount of time that you need to put in. And because retention and results are running on a system instead, not on Marcus personally remembering 40 different people's lives. So let's talk about the social proof snowball effect. So we've talked about everything that happens in order to get a client and everything that happens to get them the results. But now you're actually getting results. What do you do with it? Okay, case studies and testimonials. So as soon as the coaching infrastructure was dialed in, we made sure Marcus was consistently collecting testimonials and results, not as an afterthought, but as a fuel for the next round of content. So more client acquisition means more results, and more results should mean more client acquisition. And it's a loop. And once it gets moving and you actually distribute it in the right way, then it compounds. So after 10 weeks of launching his online program, and we built all this, he was getting some great results, right? 25 pounds in 9.5 weeks, 20 pounds in 9 weeks, 13 pounds in 5 weeks. So it was working well. So content builds trust, drives calls, become clients produce results, and then results become the next piece of content. So here's where most coaches, like even the great ones, leave a huge amount of money on the table. Is they get the result, post maybe one thing about it, like a before and after, and move on. So one client, one story, one piece of content, done. So that's not the snowball effect. That's a single snowflake that melts the second that the next post goes up. It just gets forgotten about. So a single piece of result, like a single result, can get repurposed multiple times in different formats, and each format is doing a different psychological job. They're not interchangeable. They each hit a different part of how someone actually decides to trust you, ranked roughly by effectiveness. So at the top here, we've got a client interview, which can be framed as like a podcast, which in my opinion is the strongest format by a wide margin, because it's basically to 40 minutes of someone else talking unscripted about how good the experience actually felt. And it's not Marcus just claiming the results. It's a real person's genuine emotion doing the selling, and nothing beats it for triggering an emotional response. Number two is we've got the YouTube case study breakdown. So different job entirely. This one speaks to the logical brain, right? Great result, sure, but how was it actually achieved? This format shows the mechanism, the process, the thinking, which is what builds authority and hands the viewer the real value at the same time, even if they never become a client. So you're doing two things here. You're creating a lot of value, producing great content, but you're also showing people how you're actually getting results behind the scenes. 3 is the video testimonial, so similar territory to the interview. Still has a story behind it, right? But shorter, punchier, which makes it a natural fit for Instagram, where attention spans are shorter than YouTube. And then we've got before and after photos. This is the most common format for a reason, right? Strong visual wow factor, works well as a static image on Instagram. But the problem with these is there's never any story behind it. So people see it, they think, oh, that's great. But because loads of other coaches are also posting a lot of these, they've almost become like a bit desensitized to it. They see it, they like it, and then it gets forgotten about. Then we've got the final one, which is the client win screenshot. This is the easiest of them all to collect. You can automatically collect them in check-ins, anything like that. If they send you something on WhatsApp, screenshot it, and you can mass distribute these across stories, posts, but it's also the least effective on its own. So it's useful as like volume and repetition, but it doesn't really build a lot of trust as a standalone piece. But none of that matters if it just sits in a camera roll or you don't have systems in place to collect it anyway. And even like this client interview, for example, if you're doing monthly review calls, you can even just set one up as like an interview and just frame it before the call. Do you mind if we just go into detail about your story a little bit? I might post it on YouTube. I think it would be great to inspire other people who were in your position. Or even if you record your calls and you want a video testimonial, you can ask a few strategic questions in order to spark the testimonial. And then it's so much less friction to be like, hey man, I really appreciate this part of the call. I really think it could inspire other people. Do you mind if I just clip that and put it on Instagram or whatever? So they've done the testimonial for you already. Whereas if you ask someone to manually create a video testimonial, 50% of people are going to say no. So you can just collect it automatically. So you just need to know when are the points in the journey where you've got these systems or processes set up to make it as automatic as possible. So this is also real estate that can be used. So it can be placed deliberately in certain areas. And that's what I mean by real estate, where it just stays in a specific location and it's placed somewhere where eyeballs are going to be led to. So let's take YouTube for an example. So this is probably the strongest single piece. Like the strongest single piece becomes the featured video on the channel, because if someone, let's say they find one of your YouTube videos or one of your YouTube shorts, then they click on your profile, you want that featured video to be the best video on your channel. So it's usually like a VSL or a case study on a client. And then every case study and interview should have its own playlist like this. And you can customize your YouTube channel. So you could have your VSL at the top, then like a playlist for case studies, a playlist for interviews. If you've got 5 of each, that is such a strong first impression. And if they start binge watching them, even better. It's just completely undeniable and you're going to nurture them like crazy. So another thing is we want to place social proof on the confirmation page. Obviously, we're reassuring people that they're in the right place, and we just want to show them as many wins, testimonials, and case studies as possible. Then on Instagram, we've got like story highlights, and we've got the pinned posts as well. Great real estate in order to put social proof. And to be honest, like not only that, but let's say you're trying to distribute it on Instagram. One result could be you could use it in like a reel, like a talking head video. You could use it in a B-roll with text, or you could use it as a static image. And you could do all 3 for one result. So you can get really creative with how you're distributing the social proof. And it can really enhance the perceived volume of social proof that you actually have. Because let's say for every one result, you've got 5 different formats. You do the math. That's going to be a lot of different clips. And beyond just posting it, case studies work great as lead magnets in their own right. So let's say you make a reel and you say, watch how my client, here's the breakdown of how my client went from this to this. Boom. You break down the steps, and then you say, if you want to see the full breakdown, just comment the keyword case study and I'll send you over. So not only are you just subtly building trust and nurturing people, but you're also generating leads from it as well. And the real point here is that the distribution possibilities are far bigger than most coaches realize. Even with a small number of success stories, you don't need 50 client wins, and you can build an absolute proof machine. So you just need a handful of great ones and the willingness to squeeze every format and every placement out of each one before moving on to the next. So let's move on to scale now. So you can see how it all ties together. And by the time you reach scale, you should have all of these mechanisms working consistently, and the KPIs and the metrics and the outputs should be in a good place. Like what I said back in the math section, where basically you're just trying to get proof of concept, product market fit, where people are saying yes to your content, following you, sales calls, conversations, becoming a client. And you do that enough times with enough volume, you get to the point where now it's, okay, I know all of these systems are working well. I just need to scale it and get more eyeballs. And that's where scale comes into it. So the number one skill is finding and fixing constraints. So if there's one skill that separates coaches who scale from coaches who plateau at a comfortable number, it's this, right? It's not sales, it's not content, it's not any of those things. It's a very much a CEO skill. And it's the ability to correctly identify the single thing limiting the business right now. And I can tell you it's always one thing. There's always one thing that's 80% responsible. And you have to have the ability to find it as quickly as possible and then fix it with extreme urgency. So here's what makes this hard, right? The constraint is always moving. What was capping Marcus at 10K, right? Let's say not enough qualified leads, is a completely different problem to what capped him at 30K per month, which was the fulfillment side of things. Because now he's getting a lot of people into the program, right? He was struggling to actually fulfill on his own. And then there comes a completely different one again at 50K per month, which is the founder's own time and attention, usually with sales calls, because the amount of sales calls you need to run a 50K per month business is quite a lot. So they don't fail because they lack effort. They fail because they're pouring effort into whatever feels most urgent or most familiar, right? What they think is the problem, but it's not actually the problem. So usually the constraint is not what you think. You've got the symptom, but then you've actually got the root cause. So working harder on the wrong problem isn't going to move the business. It's just going to burn the person out who's doing the work, because they're putting in all this effort and they're not getting what they need out of it to scale the business. So the habit that fixes that is a simple repeated question, which is, what's the one thing that if it's solved makes everything else easier or irrelevant? Not a list of 10 priorities, just one thing. And this is the same principle sitting underneath the whole way this business gets run. Bottleneck first, always, before touching anything else. And it's worth saying plainly that it's not a coincidence. It's the operating discipline this entire methodology is built on. Obviously, we build the foundations first in the design, all the psychological foundations that make everything easier, that all the systems revolve around. Then we go into the engineer phase, which is where we actually build the systems and the machine that's actually going to create the outputs that we want. Then we move on to scale, which is literally just making better decisions. And to make better decisions, you have to know what to focus on. So it's literally just, do we need to remove friction somewhere? Or do we need to create leverage in order to handle the volume that was created by removing that friction? Those are the two things. So once you can actually see the constraint, scaling itself is genuinely simple, and it becomes more about decision making, not working harder. So it's kind of like a two-step loop, repeated constantly. First, you want to remove friction. Whatever's creating drag and capping volume gets removed. So then you can create more flow through the pipe. And then once the flow through the pipe is running clean, then you hit a different kind of limit, right? Not friction, but the opposite, which is capacity. So the pipe itself can only run so much, no matter how clean it is. That's where leverage comes in. So splitting the flow across more capacity, let's say you hire a setter or hire a closer or hire the coach. So now you can actually get more done, okay? So you're just taking a system and a repeated process and you're hiring someone to do it for you. Or you might automate something, or just remove it completely if you don't think it needs to be there. So you find the constraint, fix it or leverage it, and everything else downstream then gets easier. And then you find the next one, because there's always one, and that's the game. So running that loop requires thinking a level up, high level, long term, constantly zoomed out enough to see where the next constraint is forming before it becomes a crisis and it lingers for too long. So that's the actual CEO identity evolution, right? You're going from coach to CEO now. And a lot of people actually struggle to make that leap, mainly because they just don't know how, and they don't know what beliefs they need to have. They don't have the insights or the data or the mentorship to know how to actually go about it. And it's mechanically impossible to operate like that while you're still wearing every hat yourself, still manually doing the things that you should be observing from above. So you can't spot the constraint in a system you're too buried inside to actually see clearly, which is exactly the gap that the next part closes. So that leads us onto the data layer, right? The business is no place for feelings, especially if you're going into new territory as well, because what you need to know going into that new territory doesn't exist inside of your brain. So your feelings are irrelevant. I know it's a bit cutthroat, but it is. You can hustle your way up to 30 to 50K per month with a lot of hard work. But beyond that is when you have to really go through the identity evolution and operate more like a CEO or a COO. So on the acquisition side, this is exactly what media scene rate, positive reply rate, Calendly sent rate, appointment booking rate framework from the DM pipeline was built for. The same stage tracking applied consistently instead of fell out on vibes or how you think things are going or assuming people's situations. It's not there for its own sake. It's there so that if something's off, the actual constraint is visible instead of assumed, oh, something's not working. But then you're probably wrong most of the time. And let's say a dropped Calendly sent rate was off, then you know that the problem is maybe the way you offered the call or the way you've booked them into the call. So let's say the conversion rate at the Calendly sent rate sucks. How can we remove friction then? I'm sending them a link and Calendly booking event has loads of questions on it. Could we remove those questions? Or could we even just book them in manually? So instead of sending them the link, which they then have to put in work to book it and they procrastinate, we're actually just saying, after they agree to the call, all we're doing is asking them, okay, what time and day works well for you? Okay, this time, perfect. Cool, what's your email and phone number? I'll book you in. Perfect, thank you. Boom. So now your Calendly sent rate, or sorry, should I say your appointment booking rate is now going to go up. Like the conversion rate between those two phases is going to get better because you've implemented something to reduce friction So the amount of throughput is going to go up. So that's how on the fulfillment side. And also there's so many things to focus on that unless you're tracking the data, it's impossible to think like that. Whereas when you track all the data, it becomes very obvious and you know exactly what the problem is. But anyways, on the fulfillment side, it's the same instinct, but just in the other direction, right? The client OS, right? It's the risk status, the churn to client tracker with reasons why people left, things like that. So that's the retention data for the back end of the business, and the DM metrics, same as what the DM metrics do for the front end and the sales data and things like that. So both of those live inside one weekly tracker. So we've got the individual trackers, which then feed into like the overall weekly tracker. And this sits above everything else, and this pulls the business into one view, which we can analyze on a week-to-week basis. And it's not a replacement, it just rolls them up into one asset. So we've got the business health, which is like revenue, new cash, active clients, churn clients. This is like your overall scoreboard. Then we break the metrics down into top of funnel, middle of funnel, bottom of funnel. So like inputs, and then the outputs of those inputs, like the views, profile visitors, link clicks, follows gained. How much traffic is actually entering the ecosystem right now? Then we've got middle of funnel. So that's out of these people, how much are we moving along the DM metrics, the lead tracker, open sent, replies, story call to actions, inbound leads. Then we're looking at YouTube is obviously a nurturing element. So like video views, subs gained, things like that. And then we've got bottom of funnel, which is calls booked, calls showed, show rate, one lost, close rate. What's actually happening when someone enters into a sales conversation. And then every week it gets logged in its own row. So the numbers aren't a single snapshot, they're a trend line. So we can see where the trajectory is going. And one bad week means nothing on its own, but 3 weeks of, say, the show rate dropping, then that's a problem that needs fixed. Or top of funnel volume holding steady while middle of funnel dries up, right? That's a trajectory, and it tells you where to look before it becomes an actual crisis. So leverage and simplicity. Once the actual constraint is visible, the instinct most people reach for is just work harder on it. But that's like the wrong instinct when you're in the scale phase, and it's worth naming directly. The real shift is going from how do I do more to what has to be true to do less and still get the same or better output. That's a more leveraged way of thinking. And to most people, that might sound lazy, but it's the entire difference between a business that compounds on its own and one that just grows in a straight line with how many hours the founder is personally putting in. Simplicity plays a bigger role in this than most people expect. Most businesses are naturally simple when they're small and almost by accident, and then rebuild complexity back in as they grow, more tools, more offers, more moving parts. They think they need to add more to get more clients because it feels like progress or it feels like the right thing to do. And then that's where they start to get bogged down and issues with capacity start to come up. And especially if they do it at the wrong time or too early, they're not going to have the cash flow to then fix those problems. So it should run in the opposite direction, right? Simplicity should be a discipline you actively protect as things scale, not something you had by default early on and you slowly lose it. And systems are what make any of this durable. So a system is the difference between a lever that only works while you're personally pulling it and one that keeps working whether you're actually there that day or not, which sets up the actual question this phase is really answering. Leverage isn't one single thing that you either have or you don't. It's a handful of distinct categories, and most coaches only ever think about one of them. So let's look at the 4 levers of leverage. So there's 4 ways to genuinely leverage a business: labor, capital, code, and media. And most business content treats all 4 as equally available to everyone. But for an online fitness coach at this stage, that's not honest, right? And pretending otherwise just wastes time chasing the wrong lever. So let's look at how these are actually relevant to online fitness coaches. So labor is the most immediately available one. This is the most common one, I would say, is when you're starting to scale, is just hiring people to take repeatable, low leverage tasks off your plate, freeing up your own time for the handful of things that only actually you can do. So for Marcus, for example, he had to prioritize as much attention as possible to YouTube because that's what was bringing in the leads, and no one else can do that for him. So he has to protect that at all costs and then prioritize all the other things in terms of, okay, in what order should I start hiring for and start delegating? Now, media is arguably the most powerful lever sitting right in front of most coaches and the one that they least think of as leverage. But what I mean by that is like content. But which content? right? A piece of long form content works while you're asleep. Months after you've made it, it's the same compounding asset, already covered back in the YouTube section. You've already got it there. People are searching for it. The views are going up over time. It's quietly booking you calls behind the scenes. So you make one really good video, might take you like 1 hour or 2 hours, and then that's quietly booking you calls and building the business. So the more YouTube assets you create, the more you're going to nurture people, the more they can binge watch your content. And ultimately over time, as the asset compounds, the more calls you're going to book from it. And then obviously as you're analyzing the data from it, you're going to be able to double down on topics that have booked the most calls. Like what I said earlier, I've got an automation set up that tells me what videos are bringing in sales calls. I've got clients with that set up as well. So it means just because a video got a lot of views doesn't necessarily mean you should double down on that. Yes, views are good, but really what we want as a business is booked calls. So a video might get like low views, but it might book a lot of calls. You should make more of those videos, right? It's common sense. So yeah, YouTube is leverage, and it's a lot more leverage than short form content, but obviously both serve a purpose. Then we've got capital. Now in its normal business sense means just using money to buy growth. So think like raising capital, acquiring other businesses and stuff. But for a business like this, that version of capital isn't really relevant. What is relevant is a narrower like use of the lever, which is buying compression. Let's say you're $100K per month. You want to get to 100K per month in the shortest time frame possible. How can you leverage capital in order to help you do that? So naturally with this business model, you have high margins, low expenses, and real profit, right? With nowhere to go. A lot of people that get carried away with like lifestyle inflation, but what you really should be doing is taking some of that profit and putting it back into the business in terms of buying your way into acquiring the insights, acquiring the knowledge, the mentorship, instead of it just sitting idle or you like spending it away on new cars and things like that. So you're basically just paying to skip the years it took someone to learn it the hard way. If someone has already gotten to 100K per month and you basically want to just buy out of the trial and error, you can actually do that. So that's how you would use capital as leverage as an online fitness coach. And to be honest, this is exactly why Marcus moved as fast as he did, because he invested in coaching with me before he'd even started, not after he tried to prove something to himself. Most people won't do that, right? Ego gets in the way, the instinct to figure it out on your own for a year or two before admitting to help, you think's the better decision, but then it ends up not being the better decision. So this is probably the biggest contributor to his speed and how he was able to get results, because he just put his ego to one side, got exactly what he needed so that he could eliminate all the doubt and uncertainty and just have a complete proven blueprint all the way to his goal. So as you can see here, he was able to make 10K per month in his first month because he just had the strategy and he knew exactly what to do. Then we've got code, which is the same thing. Like it's genuinely useful, but it's not like a massive needle mover. Think automations, AI, better software that can enhance efficiency and things like that. The problem is people get very carried away with AI and things that don't really matter that much. So I wouldn't worry too much about that and just focus on the other things, to be honest. So then we've got hiring, who to hire and when. So here's the governing rule. It's simple. You always want to prioritize the low leverage, repeatable tasks, get those outsourced first, and then high leverage judgment calls stay with the founder for as long as possible. So that's exactly how it played out for Marcus. The first hire wasn't a closer, and it wasn't a media person or anything like that, or an appointment setter. It was actually a coach to handle the delivery. Okay, so let's talk about hiring, who to hire and when. So here's the kind of governing rule, and it's simple. You want to prioritize the low leverage, repeatable tasks, get those outsourced first, and then the high leverage judgment calls stay with the founder for as long as possible. So that's how it played out for Marcus. So the first hire wasn't a closer. It wasn't like an appointment setter. It was actually a coach to handle delivery, because at that point, fulfillment was the actual constraint, not sales and not traffic. Only later, once sales volume or call volume was preventing him from focusing on content, did a closer come on board to handle that. And because although sales is high leverage, right? And it's something you'd want to outsource, like you'd want to not outsource it for as long as possible, content was basically where the leads were coming in. Although the calls were where the money was being made, if Marcus's like quality or volume with content was to get worse, then obviously those calls aren't going to happen in the first place. So that's why the decision was made to outsource sales calls so then he could focus more time on his content and keep those leads coming through. So here's the part worth being honest about, is that the hiring order isn't like a template to copy blindly. If most of a coach's traffic is coming through YouTube, direct, warm, pre-sold before the call, then the order that Marcus did can make sense. But if most traffic is coming through Instagram DMs instead, then the actual volume bottleneck usually sits earlier in the pipeline, in which case the first hire isn't a coach or a closer at all. It would actually be an appointment setter, because that's genuinely where the constraint lives. And that's how it was with my client Trevor, right? We cracked top of funnel content so much that his DMs were absolutely crazy. And the last thing the founder needs is to be hammering the DMs all day, which is exactly why I only work one-to-one as well. Partly because it's more fun for me being in the trenches alongside clients, but mainly so I have a finger on the pulse of what's actually happening at all times. And when a constraint shows up, it gets solved that week, which is something a course and group calls with 30 other people can't give you. All right, if you're still with me, I just want to applaud you for not having an attention span that's absolutely cooked. But for those of you who don't want to waste months or even years figuring out all this on your own, then this is my offer to you. If you're a personal trainer, online fitness coach, or fitness enthusiast, and you want to build, launch, and or scale your online fitness coaching business because you want more freedom to work wherever you want, you don't want an income that's capped by the amount of hours that you can work in a day, but you currently don't have a predictable way of attracting high ticket clients and business systems capable of handling 50K per month with 80% profit margins across 50 plus clients and only having to work less than 20 hours per week, we'll install our exact business marketing, sales, and fulfillment systems into your coaching business so you can replicate this process and get similar results for yourself in a fraction of the time it will take for you to do it on your own. So if that sounds like somewhere where you're at right now, then book a free one-to-one growth audit below, and I'll walk you through how it all works, and we'll come up with a free 30-day game plan that you'll walk away with, even if we decide to work together or not. But yeah, if not, just take away everything that you've learned in this breakdown, implement it for yourself, and I hope it helps. All the best. See you later.